Chapter 1355. The ferocious ghost head directly exploded, turning into wisps of yin qi. It came quickly, but it also disappeared quickly. With this move, it was obvious who was superior. Mengpo was stunned for a moment. The opponent's strength far exceeded her expectations. She did not stop there. With a scream, the dissipated yin qi once again gathered, turning into 9 ghost heads, front, back, left, and right, attacking Tang Jing together. Tang Zheng's expression did not change. He did not even let go of Li Xiaoyan's hand. His big hand fearlessly grabbed at the ghost head. Boom! A ball of flame rose from his palm. When it caught the ghost head, it immediately let out a sharp scream. The true fire was extremely effective against these ghost heads. Meng Po's expression finally changed. She staggered back. Her big hand grabbed behind her, pulling off the cloak on her body. The cloak flew out, covering the true fire. The true fire was extinguished. Tang Zheng's feet flashed. He approached Mengpe, his finger pressed against her hazy eyebrows. As long as he breathed in and out, Mengpo would undoubtedly die. Mengpe seemed to have been immobilized. She immediately became motionless, looking at Tang Zheng in horror. "You can't stop us," Tang Zheng calmly said. The other 2 ghost messengers also retreated in panic. Only now did they realize that the guy they didn't put in their eyes was actually so powerful. Even Mengpe wasn't his opponent, so they were just sending food to him. This battle from beginning to end only took a few dozen seconds, deeply shocking Mengpe. "Who exactly are you?" Mengpe asked, still in shock. "I said I was looking for the Dizang of Goguryeo." "The Dizang of Goguryeo is not here." Mengpe hesitated for a moment and said. Tang Jing furrowed his brows. Seeing this, the 2 ghost messengers nodded like they were pounding garlic and said, "Yes, the Dizang of Goguryeo is not here. This is King Songjiang's territory." King Songjiang. Tang Jing faltered slightly upon hearing this. He was no stranger to this name. After all, he was the King Yanluo of the First Court, a man who had once stood toe-to-toe with the King Yanluo of Hell. Moreover, in the 18 levels of Hell, King Songjiang had personally witnessed how Tang Zheng and the Dizang of Goguryeo worked together to eliminate the Hell King and suppress Azura. Since it was an old acquaintance, things would be even easier. "Then take me to see Song Jiangwang." Tang Jing changed his mind. There was no point in tangling with these brats. He went straight to the point and looked for Song Jiangwang. "You know our King Songjiang too?" Mengpe and the ghost messenger were dumbfounded. When this kid first said that he knew the Dizang of Goguryeo, they all snorted disdainfully, thinking that he was just using the tiger's skin as a banner. After all, the Dizang of Goguryeo was too far out of their reach. They were Song Jiangwang's subordinates, so their reverence for Song Jiangwang was more direct and stronger. Tang Jing nodded. "Of course I know him. I won't make things difficult for you. Take me to see King Song Jiangwang and everything will naturally become clear." Mengpe and the ghost messenger looked at each other in dismay. This was a dragon crossing the river. With their strength, they could only bully a living soul. As for Tang Jing, they didn't have the slightest bit of deterrence. If they angered him and threw them into the underworld river, then their souls would scatter and they wouldn't even have a chance to redress their grievances. "All right." Mengpe compromised. She clearly understood the principle of a wise man submits to circumstances. Tang Jing nodded solemnly. This time, he had finally scared these brats. Otherwise, it would have been a waste of time. They walked across the bridge of helplessness together. The thick fog gradually dissipated, and the silhouette of a majestic city appeared in the distance. "What is that?" Li Xiaotian pointed and asked. "That is Song Jiangwang City." Mengpe said. "That is King Song Jiangwang City. This entire region is under his jurisdiction." Tang Jing added. "This place seems like ancient times." There's actually such a city. Li Xiaotian exclaimed. The ghost realm and the ancient world of the human world are not much different. Tang Jing said, look over there. Those are ghost citizens. They are just like the ordinary people of our human world. Li Xiaotian opened his eyes wide and spun around, admiring the scenery and local customs of this different world. After a person dies, their soul enters the ghost realm. A portion of them will reincarnate, while a portion will become these ghost citizens and settle down in the ghost realm. Tang Jing explained with familiarity. Meng Pe and the ghost messenger were dumbfounded. Was this guy really a living person? How could he know the ghost realm like the back of his hand? They couldn't help but believe Tang Zhang's words. Maybe he really did know the big shots of the ghost realm. Immediately, they felt apprehensive. If he said a few bad words about them in front of King Song Jiangwang, then they would be in trouble. Don't look at how they were showing off just now. In reality, their positions weren't high. They were equivalent to the basic civil servants of the human world, or even crueler. A word from their superior could not only determine their future, but also their life and death. Their hearts were in a mess. Meng Pe finally mustered up her courage and carefully said, that was a misunderstanding. We didn't know your identity, so it ended up like this. The two ghost messengers put on a smile that was uglier than crying. They begged, yes, we have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. You are a great person and don't hold a grudge against us. Please let us go. Looking at their change from arrogance to deference, Li Xiaotian couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Tang Zhang with a burning gaze. Not only was he unhindered in the human world, countless people were in awe of him. In the ghost realm, he wasn't the least bit inferior. Meng Pe and the ghost messengers were afraid of him. Tang Jing didn't smile and coldly said, I will naturally tell the truth. That won't do. You are a great person and don't hold a grudge against us. Please don't lower yourself to our level. The two ghost messengers fell to their knees in front of Tang Zhang and cried. Meng Po was also terrified to the extreme. She was trembling with fear and her face was like a bitter gourd. Tang Zhang didn't mean to make things difficult for them. Seeing that he had scared them, this was considered a small punishment. He said, seeing that you are apologizing so sincerely, I will not bicker with you. Remember, be more polite to the living spirits in the future. Yes, yes. They nodded as if they had been pardoned. Along the way, many ghost citizens and ghost messengers on patrol looked at this group of people curiously. Especially since Tang Zhang was a living person, they could all see. There were even ghost messengers who took the initiative to ask, looking at Tang Zhang with unkind eyes. But with Meng Po's negotiation, these ghost messengers didn't interfere. They could only watch as they walked into Songjiang City. Li Xiaotian felt that she had really broadened her horizons, especially when she looked at the majestic city. In her impression, no matter which dynasty's city wall it was, it could not be compared to this. This was really too majestic. Songjiang City was completely different from the desolation outside the city. It was like two different worlds. It was very lively, ghost citizens were weaving together, and the noise rose and fell one after another. This was a replica of ancient times. There were shops, taverns, inns, and everything. Li Xiaotian was dazzled by the sight. There were even many special snacks, such as fried ghosts. One after another, ferocious ghosts were placed in a pot of oil. They were fried with crackling sounds, and their screams were even more chilling. Li Xiaotian, on the other hand, watched with relish and was not the slightest bit afraid. These ghosts were ghosts who had committed many crimes. After their souls were scattered, they became ghosts. They were fried by the vendors and then sold to the ghost citizens. It was said that they were very delicious and could increase one's strength. They were worth a lot. In the past, Tang Zheng came and went quickly, so he didn't have the leisure to care about these things. This time, it was an eye-opener. However, while fried ghosts were beneficial to the ghost citizens, they were harmful to Tang Jing, a living person. So he and Li Xiaotian didn't try it. Following the smooth path that extended from the entrance of the city, they finally arrived in front of a magnificent palace. The ghost general on duty stopped them. Meng Po's face didn't seem to be very useful. After all, this palace was the core area, and Song Jiangwang lived inside. The ghost general didn't dare to be careless. Seeing that they were stopped again and again, Tang Zheng was furious. Were these guys that difficult to meet? Meng Po tried her best to persuade them, but the ghost general refused to let them pass. Meng Po looked resentfully at Tang Zheng, not knowing what to do next. Tang Zheng said in a low voice, "No need to trouble you guys. I'll let Song Jiangwang come out." After saying this, he soared into the air and floated in midair. He looked down at the majestic palace and took a deep breath before shouting, "Song Jiangwang." There were many voices. Not only could it be heard in the palace, but it could also be heard in every corner of the city. This sound could be described as earth-shattering. Immediately, countless figures soared into the air, killing intent surging as they charged at Tang Zheng. In Song Jiangwang's city, to shout out Song Jiangwang's name without any fear was a great disrespect. No one had ever dared to do this before. "Who is it? You dare to make a ruckus here?" A group of fiendish ghost generals and ghost kings surrounded Tang Zheng, their expressions unkind. Tang Zheng wasn't afraid at all. He casually looked at them and said, "Call Song Jiangwang out to see me. He's been hiding in the palace all day. Is it that hard to see him?" A ghost king stepped forward and shouted, "How bold! Our king's status is so high. Is he someone you can meet just because you want to?" "That's right. Where did you come from? You dare to speak such arrogant words? Are you looking to die? That's not right. He's a living person. He doesn't belong to our ghost realm." Suddenly, a ghost king looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief and cried out in alarm. The others seemed to have awoken from a dream. They all stared at Tang Zheng and said, "How could he be a human? A living person shouting at Song Jiangwang in their territory." This wasn't as simple as a provocation. Meng Po's legs went soft in fright and she almost fell to the ground. This time it was over. This person dared to be so arrogant. This was a great disrespect to Song Jiangwang. This kind of provocation was a capital offense. Then wouldn't she be an accomplice if she brought him here? She regretted it. She shouldn't have believed this person's words and brought them to Song Jiangwang's palace. Meng Po's face was ashen. She turned her head to look at Li Xiaotian. She discovered that the corners of her mouth were curled up into a smile. It was as if she didn't care about this at all. Were these two fellows stupid and bold? Were they heartless? They didn't even know that a disaster was imminent. Meng Po wished she could immediately sneak out. She turned her gaze and discovered that the two ghost envoys that were with her had already slipped away, pulling away from her. Chapter 1356. There were so many ghost generals and ghost kings, yet Tang Zheng didn't even put them in his eyes. Naturally, everyone was enraged. Meng Po even had thoughts of dying. This guy was really not afraid of death. She was really going to die because of him. There was no hope for her to live anymore. Bang! Meng Po's body went limp, and she fell to the ground softly. Her face was ashen, and her heart was dead. Just as the ghost generals were about to attack and completely cut Tang Zheng into pieces, a figure slowly rose from the palace and shouted, "Stop!" The ghost generals were shocked. They all looked up at the sky with reverence. At the same time, they cheered in their hearts. Zheng's gaze was like that of a dead person. He was dead for sure. Tang Zheng was also that figure. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he said loudly, "Song Jiangwang, you've finally shown yourself." There was no trace of reverence in his voice. The others thought that Tang Zheng was dead for sure. After seeing Song Jiangwang, he didn't lower his head and even dared to call him by his name. Mengpo was so scared that she crawled on the ground. She raised her eyelids and glanced at Song Jiangwang. Then, she quickly lowered her head and trembled all over. On the bridge of helplessness, she could control the souls of the living, but in front of Song Jiangwang, she didn't even dare to think of resisting. Song Jiangwang was the master of this huge city. He could control the life and death of anyone. Not to mention Emir Mengpe, the other ghost kings and ghost generals didn't dare to act rashly. Yet this person dared to provoke him. If that wasn't courting death, then what was? Mengpe had already lost the ability to think. Her mind was blank, and her eyes were dull. Everyone looked at Song Jiangwang with burning eyes. They didn't know how he would react. Tang Jing also had a smile that wasn't a smile. Song Jiangwang was stunned at first. Then, he revealed a look of shock. He heard someone call him by his name in the palace. Of course, he was very angry, but he still felt that this voice was familiar. Song Jiangwang had always been cautious. Since he felt that this voice was familiar, and the other party was so unbridled, he rose to the sky. When he finally saw Tang Zhang's appearance, many memories flooded into his mind like a tidal wave. He immediately recalled the scenes in the 18 levels of hell. The Lord of the Underworld, the Shura, and the Dizang of Goguryeo had all appeared out of nowhere. After going through a series of battles, even with Song Jiangwang's strength, he could not do much. But there was one living person who was an exception. That was Tang Zheng. Not only had he fused with the King of Hell's Yama's seal, but he had also received the Ksitigarbha Sutra from Dizang of Goguryeo. Most importantly, he had actually taken the Asura with him. There was no doubt that this series of events had deeply shocked Song Jiangwang, especially the relationship between Tang Zheng and Dizang of Goguryeo, which made him very jealous. If he had such a good relationship with Dizang of Goguryeo, then King Yama would definitely be suppressed by him. In addition, it was also Tang Zheng who had fought for the promotion of the human realm to a great world. In short, although Tang Zheng was a living person, his influence in the world of spirits and souls was so great that no one could compare to him. Song Jiangwang was extremely smart. Of course, he knew very well that this person must not be provoked. He never thought that he would actually come to his territory without provoking him. His expression became unnatural. He said resentfully, "So it's you." The others were shocked. What? Song Jiangwang actually knew him. Could it be that he was not lying? Many people were confused and wondered about his status. Tang Zheng looked at Song Jiangwang with a smile that was not a smile and said, "Song Jiangwang, I trust you have been well since we last met. It is not easy to see you in the world of spirits and souls." Song Jiangwang smiled and said, "What are you saying? If you want to see me, just say the word. Why go through so much trouble? This is all because the people below have eyes but do not recognize Mount Tai." What? Did he hear wrongly? Song Jiangwang actually spoke to him in such a tone. Was this a dream? Song Jiangwang was the master of this city. Everyone had to listen to his orders. No one dared to disobey him. He was also rarely so amiable to others, especially under such circumstances. Shouldn't he be furious and then teach him a lesson? Everyone had a puzzled look on their faces. They were a little confused about the current situation. If you didn't come out, these people would have cut me into pieces," Tang Zheng said with a teasing smile. "How can they be your opponent?" Song Jiangwang said. Although he was not clear about Tang Zheng's current strength, no matter what his cultivation was, it would be troublesome to injure him. Dizang of Goguryeo would definitely not agree. How can a noble guest be refused at the door? Come into the palace with me. Song Jianguang was very enthusiastic, as if he was an old friend who had not seen each other for many years. He affectionately pulled Tang Zheng and wanted to fly into the palace. Tang Zheng refused, saying, I still have friends. He turned around and flew towards the entrance of the palace. Song Jianguang suspiciously chased after him and landed at the entrance of the palace. The other ghost generals all knelt at his feet. Song Jianguang acted as if he did not see anything and was curious about Di Zhang's every move. Suddenly, Li Xiaotian saw Tang Jing walk to her side and hold her hand. What does a living soul have to do with him? Tang Jing said. Noble guest. This person was actually a noble guest and not an enemy. When did Song Jianguang have a noble guest in the human world? How come they did not know anything about it? They watched helplessly as they flew into the palace and stood there in a daze. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Unknowingly, Mengpis seemed to have been revived. She stood up again, but her face was still full of fear. However, her eyes no longer had the deathly gray from before. Her lips trembled as she muttered to herself, finally, I don't have to die. That brat really knows Song Jianguang, and he's even a so-called noble guest. She did not dare to hope that Tang Zheng would say a few good words for her. She hurriedly left the palace and returned to her own bridge, wishing that none of this had happened. She was almost scared to death. In the palace, all the unrelated personnel retreated. Only Tang Zheng and Song Jianguang were left in the large palace. With regards to Song Jianguang's actions, Tang Zheng allowed him to do as he pleased and did not express any opinions. He had also guessed Song Jianguang's intentions. He was definitely afraid that Tang Zheng would say something out of line and embarrass him, causing him to lose face in front of his subordinates. Both parties sat down together. Song Jianguang smiled and said, I wonder what business do you have with me? Tang Zheng did not feign civility and directly said, I need to bring her back to life. Bring her back to life. Song Jianguang was shocked. His eyes widened as he stared straight at Li Xiaotian. Ever since he became the first king of hell, he had never heard of such a thing. Back then, Yi Xuanji could be resurrected because his soul was captured by the ghost realm for questioning. It was not because his life was over. Li Xiaotian was truly dead. He still wants to bring her back to life. Song Jianguang's expression turned serious. He directly said, that's impossible. Why is it impossible? There has never been such a precedent. Precedents are meant to be set. Tang Zheng did not back down. Li Xiaotian pressed on. Tang Zheng did not back down. She felt warmth in her heart, and couldn't help but grasp Tang Zheng's hand tightly. She also knew that all of this would be difficult, but hearing it from Song Jianguang's mouth, she felt that her hopes were even slimmer. Song Jianguang saw that Tang Zheng did not have the slightest intention of backing down, and his heart was also very shocked. He was determined. However, Song Jianguang still firmly shook his head, anyway, with my strength, it's impossible to do this. Then who can do it? Tang Zheng asked. Song Jianguang thought for a while, and said, in this ghost realm, only the Dizang of Goguryeo may be able to do it, but I dare not guarantee it. Tang Zheng secretly nodded. He did not expect Song Jianguang to be able to help. He came to the ghost realm to find the Dizang of Goguryeo. Then where is the Dizang of Goguryeo? Tang Zheng asked. Song Jianguang wanted to say something but hesitated, as if there was something that was difficult to say. Tang Zheng frowned, and said, is there something that you can't say? Song Jianguang smiled embarrassedly, and said more doubtfully than crying, if it were anyone else, I would definitely not tell them this news. But you are different. You are an important guest of mine, Song Jianguang. Of course, I will not hide it from you. Then hurry up and say it. Tang Zheng was a little impatient. Song Jiangwang was taking too long. The Dizang of Goguryeo is missing. Missing. In an instant, Tang Zhang's eyes widened in surprise, and he stared at Song Jiangwang in disbelief, his gaze extremely sharp. Song Jiangwang met his gaze, and said, "Why would I lie to you? Ever since the ghost realm was downgraded to a small world, the Dizang of Goguryeo went missing. Isn't he the lord of the ghost realm? How could he go missing? The Dizang of Goguryeo is indeed the lord of the ghost realm, but he does not directly lead it. The power of the ghost realm is still the same as before, but there are some slight changes." Song Jiangwang explained. Tang Zhang was deep in thought. The Dizang of Goguryeo was indeed different from others. He was not attached to power, so it was not surprising that he did not directly lead the ghost realm. But, why would he go missing for no reason? Is there really no clue at all? Tang Zhang asked unwillingly. Song Jiangwang shook his head regretfully. Actually, you also know the situation in the ghost realm. If they knew the whereabouts of the Dizang of Goguryeo, who knows how many kings of hell would try to curry favor with him. This sentence was not false. The Dizang of Goguryeo's position was too high. His decision would affect the situation in the ghost realm, as well as the future of the various forces. If they could build a relationship with the Dizang of Goguryeo, all the kings of hell would spare no effort to do so. Tang Zhang stared at Song Jiangwang without blinking. Song Jiangwang's eyes were open, and he had no intention of hiding anything. Tang Zhang observed for a long time. In the end, he confirmed that Song Jiangwang was telling the truth. The Dizang of Goguryeo had really gone missing. Then, where could he go to find the Dizang of Goguryeo? Since Song Jiangwang said that there was no way to bring Li Shaotian back to life, the other kings of hell would not have any good ideas. Therefore, it was useless to look for the other kings of hell. He could only look for the Dizang of Goguryeo. This time, he was at a dead end. Chapter 1357. Song Jiangwang chuckled bitterly. He didn't expect Tang Zhang to be so stubborn. He didn't know what to do next. Tang Zhang's eyes grew resolute as he stared intently at Song Jiangwang. "You're a King Yanluo of hell, so you're definitely more informed than I am. Don't tell me you really don't have any clues at all." Qin Ye's sharp gaze caused Song Jiangwang's heart to skip a beat, and he thought to himself nervously, "This kid's aura is completely different from the last time we met. It actually gives me a sense of apprehension. Just what level has his cultivation increased to?" Song Jiangwang knew Tang Zhang's true strength, so he didn't dare to provoke him. Under the gaze of that pair of eyes that seemed to be able to see right through his soul, he replied guiltily, It's not like we don't have any clues at all." "What clues?" Tang Zhang's heart stirred, and he immediately asked. Song Jiangwang wasn't in a hurry to answer. "Truth be told, it's not just me. The other kings of hell are also trying their best to track down the whereabouts of the Dizang of Goguryeo. All of them have more or less received some information. If we can gather all of this information together, we might just be able to find the Dizang of Goguryeo." Tang Zhang was stunned. He didn't expect Song Jiangwang to say something like this. Isn't this the same as gathering all of the information of the 10 kings of hell? This wasn't an easy task. After all, Tang Zhang was an outsider. Even though because of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, his position was extraordinary, but when it came to important matters, not everyone in the 10 Yama kings would listen to him. At the very least, the King Yanluo might not listen to him. If not for Tang Zhang, the King Yanluo wouldn't have been relegated to second place and become a subordinate to the Dizang of Goguryeo. This was equivalent to Tang Zhang dragging the King Yanluo of hell down from his throne. The King Yanluo of hell was already benevolent enough to not seek him out for revenge, so why would he still provide him with information? Tang Zhang was well aware of this. But since things had already come to this, he had no other choice but to grab hold of this slim chance of survival. "Are you sure this method will work?" Tang Zhang asked. Song Jianguang hurriedly waved his hand. I can't guarantee anything. It's just that according to my analysis, this is a feasible method. Okay, let's do that. Tang Zhang made the final decision. Song Jianguang's eyes lit up. He didn't seem to reject this decision and said with great interest, then what do you plan to do? Send a message to all the other kings of hell. Tell them to come here. I want to ask them for information on the Dizang of Goguryeo. Tang Jing thought for a while and said, I can pass on the message, but whether or not they will come is beyond my control. Song Jianguang said, tell them that I am looking for the Dizang of Goguryeo and ask them to cooperate. I will remember this friendship. Song Jianguang gave him a deep look and said, all right then. Of course, Song Jianguang was willing to pass on this message. The other kings of hell weren't fools. They knew very well that Tang Zheng and the Dizang of Goguryeo had a close relationship. This time, Song Jianguang was the one who passed on the message. This meant that he had a close relationship with Tang Zheng. This was also a way to get closer to the Dizang of Goguryeo. At the very least, in the eyes of the other kings of hell, Song Jianguang and the Dizang of Goguryeo's relationship would improve. If anyone dared to deal with Song Jianguang in the future, they would have to think twice. Only the wise and far-sighted King Song Jiang would be able to come up with such a meticulous plan. Tang Zheng wasn't in the mood to pay attention to these twists and turns. All his thoughts were on Li Xiaotian. Then I'll send someone to bring you to rest. For the next few days, you can stay here in peace. If you have any needs, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to satisfy you. Song Jianguang said resolutely and heroically. Tang Zheng had no other choice. This was the only way. Song Jianguang's subordinates led them to settle down. It was said to be one of the best rooms in the palace. The standard was so high that it was rarely seen in the world. Tang Zheng guessed most of Song Jianguang's thoughts, but he didn't point it out. For the rest of the time, Tang Zheng simply took Li Xiaotian to wander around the city to experience the local customs of the world of spirits and souls. It was an eye-opener for her. Tang Zheng knew that waiting was painful, especially for Li Xiaotian. Life and death were in an instant. One could imagine how she felt. He did his best to hope that Li Xiaotian would forget her troubles and immerse herself in joy. Li Xiaotian was indeed very happy on the surface, but very few people knew the pain in her heart. She was only unhappy in private. She once fantasized about dissuading Tang Zheng and telling him not to waste his energy. But when these words were on the tip of her tongue, she had to swallow them back. She didn't have the heart to dampen Tang Zheng's enthusiasm. Tang Zheng was indeed very active. Every day, he asked Song Jianguang about the other kings of hell's replies. The world of spirits and souls was vast. This caused the transmission of news to be very slow, but it was not a problem for the many kings of hell. They had teleportation arrays in each city that were connected to each other. They could send people and news to each other, thus greatly reducing the time and distance. Under Tang Zheng's relentless questioning, Song Jianguang always paid attention to the news. Finally, there was a reply. Some kings of hell agreed to come and mention Tang Zheng in their reply, hoping to meet him. Tang Zheng didn't expect to be so popular. He had caused such a big commotion in the world of spirits and souls. These people probably hated him to the core, but now they were rushing to meet him. All of this was very different from what he expected. He thought for a moment and understood the reason. These kings of hell were not coming for him, but for Dizang of Goguryeo. They all wanted to do the same, like Song Jianguang, to curry favor with Tang Zheng. This kind of advantage could not be given to others. Tang Zheng didn't care about their thoughts. As long as they came, he would have a way to get the information he wanted from them. Finally, the appointed day arrived. Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian arrived at the teleportation array early in the morning, looking forward to witnessing a miracle. Tang Zheng was no stranger to the teleportation array. After all, he had once cast a spell in his backyard to connect to an overseas island. Li Xiaotian had also experienced the teleportation array several times, but this time was different. It was the King of Hell that was teleporting back, and it was related to her life and death. She prayed silently in her heart, hoping that the King of Hell could bring good news. Her eyes were almost shining as she stared at the teleportation array, not letting go of any details. Powerful yin qi surged around the teleportation array, creating circles of ripples. The teleportation array began. Li Xiaotian's eyes instantly widened. Tang Jing also narrowed his eyes slightly. His pair of small eyes were very vigilant as he secretly circulated his power. Although the 10 kings of hell were here, they were not his friends after all. What if someone attacked him? Therefore, he was fully prepared. Song Jiangwang stood at the side and watched with interest. The ripples of power became more and more intense, and a figure appeared on the teleportation array. Chapter 1358. A figure walked out of the teleportation array, followed by a second and a third. Not long after, the teleportation array was filled with people. Tang Jing stared at the people who came. One by one, the kings of hell led the way, followed by the ghost kings and ghost generals they brought. What a big lineup. Tang Jing said. Dezong of Goguryeo had always wanted all living beings in the ghost realm to be equal, without the so-called privileged class. Now it seemed that this hope was too beautiful and did not come true. At least, the 10 kings of hell were still the privileged class. Tang Jing came from the human world. The forces in the human world were more complicated. How could all living beings be equal? Therefore, he had a deeper understanding. Dezong of Goguryeo's wish was very beautiful, but it was unrealistic and ignored the most fundamental thing of human nature. Could it be that the disappearance of Dezong of Goguryeo has something to do with this? He suddenly had a thought. He shook his head and threw away this wild thought. One by one, the kings of hell arrived with their subordinates. They also looked at Tang Jing curiously. If it wasn't for the fact that this was initiated by Tang Jing, they definitely wouldn't have come. After all, this was Song Jiangwang's territory. If Song Jiangwang had any bad ideas, wouldn't they be walking into a trap? Regarding Tang Jing, they had too many doubts and shock in their hearts. When they met again, pairs of sharp eyes fell on him, as if they could see through him. However, they failed. Tang Jing was becoming more and more unfathomable. The teleportation array closed. Tang Jing looked at the dense crowd and counted them one by one. He was stunned for a moment. Including Song Jiangwang, there were a total of 9 kings of hell. Only King Yanluo was missing. Song Jiangwang also noticed this, and the corners of his mouth curled up into an unfathomable smile. He and King Yanluo had always been at odds, fighting openly and secretly. Even after Dezong of Goguryeo appeared, the two of them seemed to be at peace on the surface, but there were still undercurrents surging. King Yanluo did not come to the appointment, which was exactly what Song Jiangwang wanted. In fact, it was also within his expectations. King Yama was also very cautious. He would not easily take the risk and come to Song Jiangwang's territory. In addition, King Yanluo's hatred for Tang Jing was the strongest among all the kings of hell. It was equivalent to Tang Jing directly or indirectly changing the structure of the entire ghost realm. King Yanluo was the most affected. He was already suppressing a stomach full of anger. Seeing Tang Jing and having nowhere to vent his anger, he was afraid that he would suffer from internal injuries. Song Jiangwang glanced at Tang Jing. He knew that Qin Yi had also noticed the absence of the King Yanluo of Hell, and his heart bloomed with joy. As the host, Song Jiangwang stepped forward and said warmly, "Everyone has come from afar and must be tired from the long journey. Come with me to take a rest. This is the first time many of you have come to my Songjiang city. As the host, it is only natural for me to show you around. However, the kings of hell did not appreciate it. They did not spend so much effort to come here just to admire the scenery of Songjiang City. However, they could not help but glance at Song Jiangwang and Tang Jing. They muttered in their hearts, when did these two become so close? This was the effect that Song Jiangwang had deliberately created. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Song Jiangwang was extremely pleased. Tang Jing did not care about Song Jiangwang's thoughts. He did not point out that Song Jiangwang had only come to Songjiang City by chance. The Chakravarti king waved his hand and said, Song Jiangwang, we are not here to see you or to admire the scenery of Songjiang City. We are here for him. The other kings of hell agreed. Song Jiangwang glanced at them meaningfully. These Yama kings were all biased towards King Yanluo, so Song Jiangwang wasn't angry at all. He smiled and said, everyone, let's get straight to the point. I can understand your eagerness. Since that is the case, let's invite Tang Jing to speak. Tang Jing did not expect these kings of hell to be so direct. This was exactly what he wanted. In fact, the Chakravarti king was also here to investigate the situation on behalf of King Yanluo. Although King Yanluo did not want to see Tang Jing, he did not dare to ignore him. Tang Jing coughed and took a step forward. Li Xiaotian had been by his side the whole time. Seeing how he remained calm in the face of so many kings of hell, she could not help but smile. Without a doubt, Li Xiaotian worshipped the strong. This was something that was stored in her genes. It would not change even if she lost her memories. Tang Zhang's every move attracted everyone's attention. Everyone stared at him without blinking. Dear kings of hell, I have troubled all of you to come all the way here. Thank you for giving me face. I will remember this. Tang Zhang said solemnly. King Qingguang had always been on good terms with King Yanluo. Seeing how the Chakravarti king had embarrassed King Yanluo, he was furious. This time, he quickly added, you are too polite. Since you called for King Yanluo, no matter how busy we would have rushed over immediately. The other kings of hell chimed in as well. They were obviously on King Yanluo's side. This was equivalent to raising King Yanluo's prestige and status. The Chakravarti king and the others were furious, but they could not do anything. Tang Jing did not pay attention to their scheming and directly said, everyone is busy so I will not waste everyone's time. I want to find Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and I heard that everyone has more or less clues about him. I hope that everyone will not be stingy and share it with me. Clues about the Dizang of Goguryeo. All the kings of hell were stunned. King Yanluo did not mention this in the message sent by King Yanluo. Everyone was guessing Tang Zhang's purpose, but they never expected him to come for the Dizang of Goguryeo. Of course, they had clues about the Dizang of Goguryeo. However, this was top secret information and would never be leaked. No one wanted another king of hell to find the Dizang of Goguryeo before them. But this time, it was Tang Zhang who made the request. For a moment, many kings of hell were caught in a dilemma. Doubts arose in their hearts. They looked at King Yanluo meaningfully. Could it be that King Yanluo was purposely using Tang Jing to ask for information about the Dizang of Goguryeo from them, so that he could find the Dizang of Goguryeo before them? They had to be cautious. Therefore, the king of Chakravarti and the others kept their mouths shut, as if they did not hear anything. King Yanluo was not worried. He immediately gave King Qingguang and the others a look. They understood. King Qingguang's loud voice rang out immediately. He laughed and said, ha ha ha, it's not difficult at all. If we don't help with such a small matter, it would make us seem too stingy. The other kings of hell nodded in agreement. They all expressed that they would tell him everything they knew. The king of Chakravarti and the others looked at each other, not knowing what to do. If it was any other matter, they would definitely share it without hesitation. However, this was information about the Dizang of Goguryeo. They could not make this decision. King Yanluo had already expected this. He said jokingly, "Since you are not saying anything, could it be that you are not willing to help Tangjing?" The few of them remained silent, not knowing how to respond. Don't find excuses to say that you don't have any clues about the Dizang of Goguryeo. I don't believe this at all. Tangjing won't believe this either. We are not 3-year-old children. Why would we believe such a lousy excuse? Humph, King Yanluo pressed on. The king of Chakravarti finally spoke. King Yanluo, what do you mean by this? If we don't say anything, are you going to pry open our mouths? King Yanluo was not angry. Song Jiangwang sneered, for Tangjing, I dare to do anything. Why can't I do this? You! The king of Chakravarti and the others were furious. King Yanluo was blatantly threatening them. Moreover, he was using the excuse of standing up for Tangjing. He was really shameless. King Yanluo was pleased with himself. He stared at the other party with an unfriendly expression. It looked like he was going to start a fight if there was any disagreement. King Yanluo, you are not the only one in charge in the world of spirits and souls. If you want to pry open our mouths, you need to have the ability to do so. Humph, luckily we did not stay in your palace. This is the teleportation portal. We can activate it at any time and leave this place. Do you think you can stop us? The king of Chakravarti said angrily. They did not leave the teleportation portal because they were worried that King Yanluo would attack them. Therefore, they stayed in the teleportation portal so that they could retreat at any time. From this, it could be seen that the situation in the world of spirits and souls had not eased at all. The so-called calm and peaceful atmosphere was just a facade. Is that so? Are you so confident that you can leave my Songjiang city? King Yanluo raised his eyebrows and said meaningfully. The king of Chakravarti and the others were shocked. King Yanluo, what have you done? This is Songjiang city. Of course, I am the one in charge. Not just anyone can come and go as they please, King Yanluo said in a low voice. Activate the teleportation portal, King Yanluo ordered in anger. His subordinates immediately cast spells and tried to activate the teleportation portal. Mana fluctuated, but it was immediately extinguished and disappeared without a trace. The teleportation portal failed. How did this happen? The king of Chakravarti and the others were shocked. They looked at each other and then at King Yanluo. King Yanluo said proudly, I said before that this is Songjiang city. You can only leave with the permission of me and Tangjing. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving. The king of Chakravarti shouted hysterically, King Yanluo, you are so cruel. You did not have good intentions when you called us here. We came because of Tangjing, but we did not expect to fall into a trap. Seeing that both sides were at daggers drawn, Tangjing finally spoke, everyone, please calm down. I did not invite you here with the intention of harming you. I am looking for the Dizang of Goguryeo. I just hope that you can help me generously. Although King Yanluo was suspected of using Tangjing's name, Tangjing did not want to correct him. After all, King Yanluo was standing up for him. Other than his reputation in the world of spirits and souls, he did not have much strength or capital. Since King Yanluo was willing to stand up for him, he would not nitpick and reject such good intentions. Seeing that Tangjing's tone had softened, the king of Chakravarti and the others did not immediately flare up. They looked at each other and compromised. It is not that we do not want to help you, but we do not want to let King Yanluo take advantage of us. This is my business and has nothing to do with him. There is no issue of letting him take advantage of us, Tangjing explained. But this is Songjiang city. Once he gets a lead on us, he will definitely find the Dizang of Goguryeo before us, the king of Chakravarti said straightforwardly. King Yanluo glared at the king of Chakravarti. How dare he not give him face? Then what do you want to do? Tang Jing asked. Go to Fengdu with us. The king of Chakravarti had a plan. This was specially instructed by King Yanluo before they left. No. King Yanluo rejected loudly. Chapter 1359. Song Jiangwang rejected without hesitation. How could he watch as Tang Jing went to Fengdu? That was King Yanluo's base camp. It wasn't easy for him to get on the good side of Tang Jing, so how could he let his enemy, King Yanluo, take advantage of him? Seeing Song Jiangwang's reaction, the Chakravarti king felt relieved. He retorted, this is Tang Zhang's decision, not yours. Do you want to restrict his freedom as well? The Chakravarti king wasn't an idiot. He took the opportunity to sow discord between Song Jiangwang and Tang Jing. Song Jiangwang was stunned. He hurriedly defended himself. Of course I won't restrict his freedom. Then we'll listen to his decision, the Chakravarti king said. Instantly, all eyes were focused on Tang Jing. Tang Jing was thinking. He was pressed for time. Although Li Xiaotian's body wouldn't be damaged after he performed his arts, too much time could be wasted. Therefore, he was racing against time, seizing every second. The King Yanluo definitely had the most important clue. This was like a puzzle. Without the most important clue, he wouldn't be able to find Di Zhang of Goguryeo. Therefore, this trip to Fengdu was imperative. Even if the Chakravarti king didn't mention it, he had to go. Song Jiangwang could refuse, but he couldn't. Therefore, he looked deeply into Song Jiangwang's eyes. Song Jiangwang's heart sank. He understood Tang Zhang's decision from the look in his eyes. He sighed inwardly, knowing that he couldn't stop him. Song Jiangwang, thank you for your good intentions, but I must go on this trip to Fengdu. Tang Zhang said resolutely. Song Jiangwang nodded slowly. Understood. Seeing this, the Chakravarti king and the others were secretly delighted. They had finally disrupted Song Jiangwang's plan. The King Yanluo would definitely praise them when he found out. But suddenly, Song Jiangwang raised his voice and said, for your safety, I'll go with you. Song Jiangwang was going to Fengdu too. The other Yama kings were all shocked, and they stared at Song Jiangwang in disbelief. However, the resolute look on Song Jiangwang's face clearly indicated that he wasn't joking. He had really risked his life for Tang Jing. Tang Jing looked at Song Jiangwang with a burning gaze. At this moment, his good impression of him multiplied. He was very clear about the situation in the ghost realm and was not willing to let Song Jiangwang take the risk. He said, no need, I am not someone who will be trampled on by others. If someone really wants to harm me, I will make them pay a painful price. The Chakravarti king hurriedly said, you worry too much. Fengdu city is the safest place. It will definitely protect you and prevent those with ulterior motives from harming you. Song Jiangwang snorted coldly and said, you're the ones with ulterior motives, right? Tang Zhang was like Tang Sanzang's meat, a delicious cake. All forces in the world of spirits and souls wanted to rope him in. Even for the king of hell, although he secretly hated Tang Jing to the bone, if he could rope him in, the king of hell would definitely spare no effort. This was the transcendent status of Tang Jing. We'll go too. This kind of thing naturally needs to be witnessed by everyone. King Qingguang and the others agreed. They did not want Song Jiangwang to go alone and take the risk. Song Jiangwang nodded heavily and agreed with their decision. Tang Jing did not try to persuade them anymore and said, since that's the case, there's no time to lose. Let's go to Fengdu city now. The teleportation array opened and Tang Jing held Li Xiaotian's hand and disappeared with the other kings of hell. The next moment, they were standing in Fengdu city. Apart from Song Jiangwang, the other kings of hell secretly sized up Li Xiaotian and recognized that she was a living soul. They guessed that Tang Zhang's trip to the ghost realm was related to this living soul. Tang Zheng did not say that he wanted to bring her back to life. Song Jiangwang did not have a way, and he did not expect the other kings of hell to have a way. In the Yama Palace, King Yama had been waiting for a long time. When he saw everyone walking over, he took 3 steps forward and arrived in front of Tang Zheng. He enthusiastically held his hand, as if they were good friends who had not seen each other for a long time. This made Tang Zheng almost have an illusion. He couldn't help but sigh that King Yama was indeed not an ordinary person. No wonder he could command a region. Ha ha ha, the arrival of an esteemed guest truly brings light to Fengdu City. I often miss you since we parted that day. King Yama said insincerely. Tang Zheng smiled awkwardly and said, this time, I have a request. Between you and me, there is no need to use the word request. If there is anything, just say it. I will do my best to complete it for you. King Yama said enthusiastically. He glanced at Song Jiangwang from the corner of his eye, as if to say that if you can pull strings with Tang Zheng, can't I? Song Jiangwang secretly hated him, but there was nothing he could do. I want to find Dizong of Goguryeo. I heard that you have clues, so I need this clue. Tang Zheng went straight to the point. What's this? King Yama said casually, when I heard the news of you coming to the ghost realm, I thought that King Song Jiangwang was deliberately mystifying things, so I ignored it. Otherwise, I would definitely go to Songjiang City to see you. Why would I make you go through the trouble of coming to Fengdu City? Song Jiangwang snorted coldly and said, speaking of which, who doesn't know what you're thinking? King Yama pretended not to hear it and automatically filtered it out. He said enthusiastically, you want to find Dizong of Goguryeo. Actually, I also want to find him. After all, there are too many things in the ghost realm, and many things still require him, the master of the realm, to make the decision. After pausing for a moment, he continued, it's just that King Song Jiangwang and I have too many differences. I've wanted to cooperate with him several times to find Dizong of Goguryeo, but he didn't agree. King Yama, when did you find me to cooperate? King Song Jiangwang immediately retorted. King Yama smiled and didn't argue with him. He continued to say, now that you're here, of course I'm willing to give you the relevant clues. As for the others, I can't control them. King Yama took the initiative to gain the upper hand. As expected of the master of Fengdu City, he quickly turned the situation around. Only then did King Song Jiangwang realize that he had underestimated King Yama. Everyone knew that King Song Jiangwang was resourceful, but now it seemed that King Yama was not to be outdone. King Song Jiangwang raised his head high and said, King Yama, don't say such empty words. Whoever is not willing to share the relevant information with Tang Zheng is my enemy. I will definitely seek justice for Tang Zheng. Sure, if anyone doesn't share, they will also be my enemy. I will never agree. King Yama said without showing any weakness. Since the 2 kings of hell had agreed, the other kings of hell naturally wouldn't have any objections. They all took the initiative to share their information. In fact, the information in their hands had already been shared with King Yama or King Song Jiangwang. The relevant information was immediately gathered together. Not long after, there was a general result. Everyone focused on the result. King Yama and King Song Jiangwang raised their heads at the same time. They were the first to see the clues and came to a conclusion. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. The 2 of them said at the same time. Tang Zheng was an outsider and didn't know much about the ghost realm. He didn't see any clues and asked curiously, how is it? King Song Jiangwang couldn't wait and said, Dizong of Goguryeo's whereabouts have come out. Then where is he? Eye of Samsara. Eye of Samsara. Tang Zheng frowned in surprise. He had never heard of this place before, but in the ghost realm, this was a well-known place. Because this was the place where the ghosts of the ghost realm reincarnated. It was a public area that didn't belong to any of the 10 kings of hell. Once the 10 kings of hell decided which ghosts wanted to reincarnate, these ghosts would be sent to the Eye of Samsara and reincarnate in the human world. This was a place under the eyes of all the kings of hell, but it was also the place that was most easily ignored. Because this place didn't belong to any king of hell, it had been like this since the moment the ghost realm was formed. Therefore, no king of hell paid too much attention to the Eye of Samsara. They never thought that they would spend so much effort to search for clues everywhere. In the end, the Dzong of Goguryeo was right under their noses. This was really a case of darkness under the light. The kings of hell had complicated feelings, but another question popped up. Why did the Dzong of Goguryeo go missing and run to the Eye of Samsara? If he wanted to save all living beings in the ghost realm, shouldn't he be in various cities? The Eye of Samsara was to be reincarnated in the human world. What was the use of going there? They couldn't figure it out no matter how hard they racked their brains. Perhaps only by finding Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva would they be able to solve this mystery and obtain the answer. Tang Jing didn't care about this. Since he had found the whereabouts of the Dzong of Goguryeo, of course he couldn't wait to see him. The others had the same thoughts, so they hit it off. Li Xiaoyan's eyes also lit up with hope. She looked at Tang Jing with sparkling eyes. Tang Jing held her hand tightly and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, there will definitely be a way." King Yanluo had been sizing up Li Xiaotian. Other than seeing that she was a living soul, he didn't find any other useful information. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. Taking advantage of the gap when everyone was walking towards the teleportation array, he asked curiously, "Tang Jing, I haven't asked what relationship this lady has with you." Tang Jing looked at Li Xiaotian affectionately and said, "She is my lover." Lover? Li Xiaotian couldn't help but stop in her tracks. She looked at Tang Jing with burning eyes. She was extremely excited, as if she had thousands of words to say, but they were stuck in her chest and she couldn't say a single word. She had the urge to cry. These 2 words meant too much. It was a kind of recognition. She didn't expect him to say it out loud like this. This was a kind of affirmation and recognition for her. Tang Jing saw through her mood and held her hand even tighter. When the kings of hell heard this, their hearts trembled. They didn't expect this living soul to be his lover. They didn't guess wrong. The purpose of Tang Zhang's trip was definitely related to her. "It's a pity that your lover has left you. But don't worry, she will receive the best care in the ghost realm." King Yanluo hurriedly expressed his stance. His words could indeed give a living soul the best treatment and all kinds of privileges in the ghost realm. Tang Jing shook his head. "Thank you for your good intentions, but she doesn't need this." King Yanluo was stunned. A living soul didn't need his care. Could it be that King Song Jiangwang had promised him more benefits? "Don't worry, no matter what King Song Jiangwang promises you, I can do it." King Yanluo didn't want all the credit to be snatched away by King Song Jiangwang, so he quickly added. King Song Jiangwang looked at King Yanluo in ridicule, thinking that your flattery had hit the nail on the head. King Yanluo's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he had made a mistake? Tang Jing shook his head and didn't say a word. When the other kings of hell saw this, they didn't dare to ask. Chapter 1360. The Eye of Reincarnation, a huge whirlpool that looked like an eye was suspended in the air, attracting everyone's attention. Tang Zhang and Li Xiaotian were also deeply attracted by this scene, staring at the huge eye at the same time. There were several long lines around the Eye of Reincarnation, all of them were ghosts. Under the arrangement of the ghost messengers and ghost generals, they all entered the Eye of Reincarnation. Swish! A green light fell from the Eye of Reincarnation, enveloping the ghosts below. A burst of Sanskrit suddenly sounded, like heavenly music, making people feel relaxed and happy. A huge golden Sanskrit character flew down from the eye of reincarnation and imprinted on the forehead of the ghost. The golden light flashed and the ghost was absorbed into the eye of reincarnation, disappearing without a trace. Ha! The 10 kings of hell exclaimed, looking at the eye of reincarnation with shining eyes. Shock appeared in their eyes. Why is there a golden Sanskrit character? King Yanluo finally couldn't help but blurt out. That's right, how could the eye of reincarnation have such a thing? It didn't have it before. King Song Jiangwang also found it hard to believe. Tang Zheng's heart moved, recalling the golden Sanskrit character, which belonged to the same lineage as his own Ksitigarbha Sutra. Could it be the doing of the Dizang of Goguryeo? The 10 kings of hell weren't idiots, they immediately thought of this possibility. Where is the Dizang of Goguryeo? They suddenly had an ominous premonition. They couldn't wait to find the Dizang of Goguryeo and ask him what was going on. King Yanluo suddenly grabbed a ghost general who walked past him and asked sternly, "Stop, I'm asking you a question." The ghost general looked at him with a normal expression and asked, "What's the matter?" "What's the matter?" King Yanluo felt that this was too strange. Was there anyone in the ghost realm who didn't know him? Seeing him in front of them, they didn't kneel down to pay their respects, but instead asked him so casually. Strange. All of this was filled with strangeness. If it was in the past, not to mention the 10 kings of hell, as long as any of the kings of hell came here, those ghost messengers would stop what they were doing and come forward to pay their respects. But this time, they had mobilized so many Yama kings, yet not a single one of them came forward to pay their respects. This was extremely strange. The other kings of hell also noticed this, and they stared intently at the ghost general in front of them. However, the ghost general's expression was calm, and he didn't show the slightest hint of fear. "Don't you recognize me?" King Yama took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. "You are the king of hell," the ghost general indifferently said. "You know me, yet you dare to be so disrespectful." These words had undoubtedly poked at King Yanluo's sore spot. Qin Yi had brazenly declared that he knew him, yet he still dared to treat him in such a manner. Was he courting death? All living things are equal. Whether you are the king of hell or someone else, you are all the same in my eyes. The ghost general calmly said. All living beings are equal. Everyone muttered these words and sucked in a breath of cold air as a chill rose in their hearts. They couldn't be more familiar with these words. Wasn't this what the Dizang of Goguryeo had been repeating? The Dizang of Goguryeo had always wanted to deliver all living things from torment, and realize his great wish of equality. However, this was snatching food from the pot of the 10 kings of hell, so how could he agree? All kinds of hypocrisy and civility, and secretly obstructed the Dizang of Goguryeo's plan. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that they would actually meet someone who had been truly converted by the Dizang of Goguryeo in the eye of reincarnation. They had always thought that the Dizang of Goguryeo had long since given up on this plan. Who would have thought that he would find another way, and actually carry out his plan in a place that even the 10 kings of hell hadn't noticed? They subconsciously glanced at the other ghost generals and ghost envoys. Their expressions were exactly the same as the ghost generals. Could it be that they had all been converted by the Dizang of Goguryeo? At this moment, another ghost stood in the eye of reincarnation. The green light descended, and so did the golden Sanskrit characters. Everyone stared at the golden Sanskrit characters at the same time. Suddenly, they realized something and shouted, "The Dizang of Goguryeo must be here." The previous clues only indicated that the Dizang of Goguryeo might be here, but after seeing this scene, they immediately came to this conclusion. The ghost general didn't continue to speak with the king of hell. He turned around and returned to his post. Seeing that he actually dared to turn around and leave, the king of hell became even angrier. He reached out his hand and enveloped the ghost general. He shouted, "How dare you be so impudent!" Whoosh! The ghost general's strength was no match for the king of hell's ghost hand. He flew back towards the king of hell, but he didn't panic. Instead, he was incomparably calm, as if all of this had nothing to do with him. The king of hell didn't see the scene he had expected. He became even angrier, thinking that this was a serious provocation to him. Thus, he grabbed with his finger, and an invisible force contracted inwards, as if wanting to crush the ghost general into pieces. Suddenly, the ghost general stopped in midair and didn't continue to fly towards the king of hell. The ghost general was safe and sound. He didn't shatter into pieces. Instead, he slowly descended and steadily landed on the ground. This wasn't the king of hell being merciful. Everyone saw this and was shocked. They looked around, but didn't see any suspicious people. The king of hell was extremely angry. No matter how hard he tried, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. It had no effect at all. He could only watch as the ghost general was not far away, but he couldn't hurt him at all. This kind of situation had never happened before. Tang Zhang and Li Xiaotian watched this scene attentively. Li Xiaotian whispered, "What's going on?" Tang Zhang slightly shook his head and thoughtfully said, "It seems that the situation in the ghost realm is more complicated than I thought. The 10 kings of hell have encountered a big problem." "What big problem?" "A big problem related to their status." Li Xiaotian didn't really understand. For a moment, he wanted to ask for an explanation, but he found that the situation had changed greatly. The ghost general had already broken free from the king of hell's control and regained his freedom. He quickly retreated and immediately immersed himself in his work. It was as if nothing had happened and he wasn't affected at all. One after another, ghosts stood in the eye of reincarnation and were sucked into it in an orderly manner. This silent scene seemed to have a huge force that fiercely attacked the nerves of the 10 kings of hell. Finally, they couldn't take it anymore and rushed in. They interrupted the eye of reincarnation and shouted, "Dizang of Goguryeo, where are you? Hurry up and come out." The world instantly quieted down. It was so quiet that it was frightening. The cold wind blew and the cold air seemed to blow into the hearts of the 10 kings of hell. Tang Zhang seemed to have sensed something and looked towards the eye of reincarnation. Li Xiaotian also followed his gaze and asked, "Did you sense something?" Tang Zhang slightly nodded. He cultivated the Ksitigarbha Sutra and did sense a familiar energy spreading out from the eye of reincarnation. Whoosh! Sure enough, a golden light spread out from the eye of reincarnation. In an instant, the world was bathed in golden light. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. Those ghost generals were like devout believers. They immediately put their palms together and chanted Buddha's name. The golden light became even brighter. In an instant, this place didn't seem to be the ghost realm, but another world. This illusion made the hearts of the 10 kings of hell fall to the bottom. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. The golden light of the eye of reincarnation became stronger and stronger. Finally, a lotus throne gradually appeared. A person sat on it with a solemn appearance. Just a glance was enough to shake one's heart. "Dizang of Goguryeo." Exclamations sounded one after another as they stared at the figure in the golden light. Who else could it be but the Dizang of Goguryeo? Tang Zhang was pleasantly surprised. He finally found the Dizang of Goguryeo. There was hope for Li Xiaotian's revival. He subconsciously clenched Li Xiaotian's hand. Li Xiaotian felt the change in him, and her heart also tensed up. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva also chanted the name of Buddha, which resonated with the names of the ghost soldiers and ghost messengers. The 10 kings of hell's expression became gloomy and ugly. Even King Song Jiangwang, the king of hell who had always wanted to build a good relationship with Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, had a solemn expression on his face as he stared at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. King Yanluo pondered for a moment and finally asked, "Dizang of Goguryeo, what are you doing? Don't you need to give us an explanation?" In fact, the 10 kings of hell had already seen through the actions of the Dizang of Goguryeo. He had converted the ghost messengers and ghost generals of the Eye of Reincarnation. They were no longer the subordinates of any of the kings of hell. However, they had a doubt in their hearts. After all, there were too few ghost messengers and ghost generals here. What was the use of the Dizang of Goguryeo converting so few ghost messengers and ghost generals? There must be a deeper reason for the Dizang of Goguryeo to do this. It was just that they had not discovered it yet. The Dizang of Goguryeo looked at the furious 10 kings of hell and was not frightened. He was still as calm as before as he slowly said, "To save all living beings and to reform all living beings. This is my life's great wish. What I am doing now is to achieve my great wish." "Your great wish? Humph, you make it sound nice. You are harming others for your own benefit, do you know that?" King Nianluo did not care about angering the Dizang of Goguryeo, because he already felt that he was in imminent danger. Harming others for my own benefit? What good does this do for me? King Nianluo was not angry and sneered. These guys all listen to your orders. If this is not harming others for your own benefit, then what is it? King Nianluo asked aggressively. Who said that they listen to my orders? Isn't that so? The Dizang of Goguryeo chanted the name of Buddha and shook his head with a sigh. No, you are wrong. They are listening to their own hearts, not me. Listening to their own hearts. The 10 kings of hell felt that these words were like a fantasy story, unreasonable. In their view, subordinates obey their superiors and ultimately listen to their orders. This was the truth. Listening to one's own heart, wasn't this nonsense? It was really unheard of. What kind of people were the 10 kings of hell? Of course, they would not be moved by these words. They all stared at the Dizang of Goguryeo with unkind expressions and said, "You are destroying the foundation of the ghost realm and will cause chaos in the ghost realm. At that time, you will not be the one to save all living beings and bring them a peaceful life. Instead, you will bring them endless suffering. This does not depend on me, but on all of you." The Dizang of Goguryeo was not intimidated by these threats. The King of Hell's meaning could not be more obvious. Chapter 1361. Dizang of Goguryeo naturally understood the intentions of the 10 kings of hell, but he did not give in. He said solemnly, "The peace and stability of the ghost realm cannot be destroyed. If anyone dares to violate the universal condemnation, they will be punished accordingly." Dizang of Goguryeo had the heart of a bodhisattva, but he also had the courage of a Vajra. He would not be threatened by the kings of hell. These words made the 10 kings of hell stunned as they stared at him blankly. But who were the 10 kings of hell? Naturally, they would not compromise. They looked at each other and said resolutely, "Do you dare to kill all of us kings of hell? The sea of bitterness is boundless, repent and the shore is at hand. If we are lost, I don't mind doing so." I think the beings of the ghost realm would also like to see this scene. Dizang of Goguryeo pondered for a while and said. The pupils of the 10 kings of hell shrank. They did not expect the Dizang of Goguryeo to be so resolute, as if he had made up his mind. In fact, Dizang of Goguryeo also knew that the 10 kings of hell were not lying. If he really wanted to get rid of the 10 kings of hell, the ghost realm would be in chaos. After all, they had been operating for so many years, it would not be so easy for them to fall apart. But one thing was certain. The Dizang of Goguryeo and the 10 kings of hell were well aware of this point. Once this period of chaos was over, the ghost realm would eventually return to peace and harmony. It might even be more peaceful than it was now. After all, no one wanted someone to ride on their head, and even more so, did not want their fate to be in the hands of others. The Dizang of Goguryeo's promotion of equality was undoubtedly their gospel, and could remove the shackles on their bodies. The beings of the ghost realm were happy to see this happen. The 10 kings of hell looked at each other. For a moment, they did not know how to respond. Song Jiangwang was resourceful and had an idea. He looked at the eye of reincarnation and said, "Dezong of Goguryeo, you didn't come here just to save these ghost messengers and ghost generals, did you?" "That's right, how could I forget this?" The hearts of the other kings of hell immediately lit up, and they all turned to Dezong of Goguryeo with unblinking eyes. Every king of hell had this question in their hearts, but they were completely confused by the question thrown by Dezong of Goguryeo. For a moment, they didn't think of this crucial point. Dezong of Goguryeo stared deeply at Song Jiangwang. Surprisingly, he did not hide anything and said honestly, "What I do is, of course, to deliver all living beings from torment." Song Jiangwang pointed and said, "Could it be that this is what you're referring to? This doesn't sound like the great ambition of Dezong of Goguryeo." "Of course not." Dezong of Goguryeo shook his head and said meaningfully, "I want to convert all living beings under the heavens. Although they are one of them, they are too few." The hearts of the 10 kings of hell trembled. Song Jiangwang seemed to have caught onto something and impatiently asked, "Then how are you going to convert all living beings under the heavens?" Dezong of Goguryeo gave an enigmatic smile. The smile at the corner of his mouth was like 10 miles of spring wind, making people feel relaxed and happy. Tang Zhang and Li Xiaotian had this kind of feeling, especially Li Xiaotian. His soul seemed to have been strengthened and he enjoyed this feeling very much. For a moment, Tang Zhang had no choice but to temporarily suppress his purpose of coming here. He quietly looked at the two sides who were at daggers drawn. Dezong of Goguryeo pointed to the eye of reincarnation in the sky and said, "The souls reincarnated from here have already been baptized by the Ksitigarbha Sutra and have been converted. The concept of all living beings being equal will be rooted in their souls. Whether they reincarnate as humans or die in the future, this concept will always accompany them." The 10 kings of hell seemed to have heard something extremely terrifying. They were all moved and turned pale with fright. They cried out involuntarily, You actually have this plan. This is really a good plan." Everyone was shocked by this plan. Tang Zheng was also shocked and asked, "Doesn't that mean that when they are reincarnated as humans, the belief of all living beings being equal will also accompany them when they are in the human world?" Dezong of Goguryeo had already seen Tang Zheng. Although he did not understand the purpose of his visit, he still nodded in a friendly manner and said, "Yes." Tang Zheng also realized the huge changes this would bring. It would not only affect the ghost world but also the human world. From then on, the new generation born would not recognize the existing rules of the world. They would believe in the equality of all living beings. At that time, the original world system would be completely destroyed, and it would also cause chaos. Tang Zheng realized the seriousness of the problem, and his face could not help but change greatly. In fact, as a person of the new era, he also understood the great significance of all living beings being equal. But how could there be such a good thing in the world? This kind of change would definitely be accompanied by bloody sacrifices. This was something he did not want to see. If all living beings were really equal, then the world structure would change greatly. Even countries would not exist. He did not even dare to imagine that scene. King Yanluo had an idea, as if he had discovered a new continent. He looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze and said, "Tang Zheng, now you know the serious consequences of his plan. Not only will it cause chaos in the ghost world, even your human world will not be spared." Song Jiangwang also nodded. He was someone who had vested interests, so of course he did not want his privileges to go down the drain. At least on this matter, the 10 kings of hell had a common request and reached a unified opinion. Dezong of Goguryeo did not care about King Yanluo's attempt to sow discord. Instead, he stared kindly at Tang Zheng and said, "Tang Zheng, you cultivate the Ksitigarbha Sutra, so you should understand my good intentions." Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and secretly nodded, "I understand." Of course he understood the great significance of all this. If this was really realized, then perhaps there would be no more disputes in this world, no more bloodshed, and it would be a paradise. The paradise that was mentioned in the Ksitigarbha Sutra might be like this. Although Li Xiaotian did not understand Dizang of Goguryeo and the ghost world, she still vaguely understood 70 to 80% of it. Her expression changed greatly as she grabbed Tang Zhang's hand and slightly shook her head, saying, "No, this will not work." Dizang of Goguryeo asked doubtfully, "Why?" Someone questioned his great ambition, so he naturally wanted to know the reason. Li Xiaotian raised her head and stared at Dizang of Goguryeo in a daze, hesitating. Tang Jing knew that Li Xiaotian was resourceful and meticulous. Every word and action of hers had a deep meaning, so she would not speak carelessly to him. Thus, he patted her hand and encouraged her, "If you have any ideas, boldly say it." Although he agreed with Dizang of Goguryeo's great ambition, and this was definitely a good starting point, he also understood that it would cause a lot of chaos and even sacrifice. Thus, for a moment, he did not know how to choose. Listening to Li Xiaotian's point of view was a good idea. Li Xiaotian glanced at Tang Zhang and was encouraged by him. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward and bowed to Dizang of Goguryeo, saying, "This is just a small opinion of mine. If there is anything wrong, please forgive me." Seeing that Tang Zhang's companion actually rejected Dizang of Goguryeo's point of view, the 10 kings of hell's eyes lit up. They were all full of interest and could not wait to hear her opinion. She was the girl that Tang Jing loved. If she could persuade Tang Jing, then Tang Jing could stand on their side and persuade Dizang of Goguryeo, then they could avoid a huge dispute. The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva smiled amiably, looking like he was all ears. He was not angry. If he could not even persuade a living soul, then his so-called deliverance of all living beings would be like the moon in the water. Therefore, he wanted to convert this living soul. Although the world of spirits and the human world are two different worlds, along the way, although I have not seen much, my feelings are very deep. There are many similarities between the two worlds, there is no doubt about this. Li Xiaotian was not a person who had stage fright. After calming her mind, she spoke frankly with assurance. When the others heard this, they nodded and agreed with her conclusion of observation. Since there are similarities, then the world of spirits and souls can also be judged by the human world's experience. There were all kinds of strange people in the world. Every person was an individual with their own unique way of thinking. In this world, there will never be two people who are exactly the same. Even if their appearance is the same, their thoughts will definitely be completely different. Li Xiaotian was naturally intelligent and had enough understanding of human nature. Otherwise, she would not be able to lead the Li Palace. It is precisely because of this unique characteristic that humans will have selfish desires and different identities. This different identity will inevitably cause all living beings to be unable to be equal. Dizang of Goguryeo listened quietly and retorted, "It is true that humans have selfish desires, but a soul that has experienced the Ksitigarbha scripture's conversion can overcome this selfish desire and thus strengthen the belief that all living beings are equal." Li Xiaotian still stubbornly shook her head and said resolutely, "Impossible. There is no such thing as complete fairness in this world, and even more so, there will not be a person who is completely fair. In fact, in human history, there have been people who have dreamed of establishing such a society, but in the end, they all failed. Because this is against human nature." Against human nature. Dizang of Goguryeo frowned. These 3 words were without a doubt a very serious accusation, almost rejecting his grand wish from the very foundation. When the 10 kings of hell heard this, they were all overjoyed. This girl had a sharp tongue, and the words of an outsider were worth 10,000 of their words. Because she did not have any vested interests, her words were more persuasive than the 10 kings of hell. Tang Jing fell into deep thought. Li Xiaotian's words were like pouring wisdom into his head, making him suddenly see the light, as if a light had lit up his heart. Since he started cultivating the Ksitigarbha scripture, many of his thoughts had gradually leaned towards the Dizang of Goguryeo. Therefore, when the Dizang of Goguryeo raised this grand wish, although he knew that there would definitely be hope, he did not oppose it. But after all, he was someone who had lived in the human world for nearly 20 years, and his daily experience was very profound. Especially after Li Xiaotian's advice, his feelings were the most intense. Li Xiaotian seemed to be excited as she continued, "Your plan seems perfect, and the starting point is also very good. It is for the sake of all living beings, but it is a castle in the air. It seems perfect, but the foundation is not stable, and in the end, it will fall short of success." Li Xiaotian dared to say that, and these words completely rejected the hundreds and thousands of grand wishes of the Dizang of Goguryeo. This was undoubtedly a huge blow and challenge. When she finished speaking, there was complete silence. No one objected, and no one agreed. Instead, the 10 kings of hell looked at her with a trace of respect and gratitude. Dizang of Goguryeo's solemn expression changed for the first time. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his gaze fluctuated incessantly as he looked straight at Li Xiaotian. Chapter 1362. Li Xiaotian met Dizang of Goguryeo's gaze without a trace of fear. These were her heartfelt words. She admired Dizang of Goguryeo for having such a great ambition, but she did not believe that it could be realized. Tang Zheng understood Li Xiaotian. Looking at her firm eyes, his heart stirred, as if he was infected by these words. The 10 kings of hell almost cheered. These words were more convincing than if they had said it themselves. Because this was said by an unrelated person, she was not a person with vested interests. Dizang of Goguryeo's expression kept changing. He looked straight at Li Xiaotian and said, "Do you really think that my great ambition is a castle in the air?" "Yes." Looking like Dizang of Goguryeo's imposing manner, Li Xiaotian took a deep breath and insisted on her point of view. Dizang of Goguryeo did not get angry. He muttered, "I will prove that you are wrong." "How will you prove it?" The others also looked at Dizang of Goguryeo curiously, not knowing how he would prove it. "You are a living soul. You will witness how I achieve all of this in the ghost realm," Dizang of Goguryeo said without hesitation. Song Jiangwang's heart moved. He quickly turned his head to look at Tang Zheng. Dizang of Goguryeo wanted to keep Li Xiaotian in the ghost realm. This was undoubtedly the opposite of Tang Zheng's goal. Would he agree? As expected, Tang Zheng's expression changed when he heard this. He said, "Absolutely not." "Why not?" Dizang of Goguryeo did not expect Tang Zheng's reaction to be so big. He could not help but ask curiously. Tang Zheng did not delay any longer and simply stated his purpose. "I came to the ghost realm to bring her back to life. I will not let her stay in the ghost realm." As soon as these words came out, other than Song Jiangwang, the other 9 kings of hell were shocked. With their experience, they never thought that someone would dare to make such a request. Of course, they were the same as Song Jiangwang. They had no way to do this. Dizang of Goguryeo raised his eyebrows. His calm face seemed to wrinkle. He stared at Tang Zheng and asked, "You want to bring her back to life?" Tang Zheng nodded heavily. "Human death is a law of nature. You are going against the law of nature. Do you understand?" Dizang of Goguryeo asked. Tang Zheng nodded his head openly and without hiding anything. "You are a cultivator. You should understand the laws of nature and not go against them," Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said earnestly. Tang Zheng had a different opinion. He shook his head and said, "Cultivators seize the good fortune of heaven and earth. They cultivate their body and mind, prolong their lifespan and enhance their strength. This is fighting against the heavens. How can you talk about following the law of nature? If you really follow the law of nature, then you should be an ordinary person and live and die normally." Dizang of Goguryeo did not expect Tang Zheng to have such an argument. He was stunned, but he was not frightened by these words. Your words seem to make sense, but in fact, they are ridiculous. Hearing Dizang of Goguryeo bluntly reprimanding Tang Zhang's words as ridiculous, the 10 kings of hell became excited. Their eyes lit up. There was no doubt that Tang Zhang was on their side. If they had an ally like Tang Jing, the 10 kings of hell would have more bargaining chips. Li Xiaoyan's heart tightened. He looked at Tang Jing worriedly. He wanted to persuade him, but there was no way to do so. Tang Zhang was a stubborn person. Once he made up his mind, no matter what she said, she would not be able to persuade him to change his mind. Moreover, Li Xiaotian agreed with Tang Zhang's words from the bottom of his heart. He did not want him to go against his will and say words that went against his heart. I don't think it's ridiculous. Tang Jing argued. Dizang of Goguryeo shook his head. We can be different from ordinary people because we are the chosen ones. The heavens chose us. That is why we have today's achievements. The chosen ones. Tang Jing frowned. This statement was extremely mysterious, but he did not believe it at all. Dizang of Goguryeo seemed to see through his thoughts and continued, the chosen ones naturally follow the heavens. They are definitely not fighting against the heavens as you said. Because everything you have is given to you by the heavens. Otherwise, do you think you can have today's achievements? Tang Zheng suddenly felt that it was a little ridiculous. He admired Dizang of Goguryeo very much, but he felt that his statement was really ridiculous. Perhaps, this was the difference between the ancient people and the modern people. Dizang of Goguryeo still retained many of the ancient people's thoughts, so it was inevitable that there would be limitations. Tang Zhang's strength could not be compared to the Dizang of Goguryeo, but in some aspects, he felt that he was better than the Dizang of Goguryeo. My achievements are the result of my own hard work, not the heavens. You are wrong about this. Tang Jing retorted bluntly. Dizang of Goguryeo heard this and his frown deepened. This was a challenge to his authority, and even his beliefs. You are going astray. I taught you the Ksitigarbha Sutra, but I didn't expect that after so long, you still haven't understood the essence of it. Instead, you have gone astray. What a pity. Dizang of Goguryeo sighed with regret. After a pause, Dizang of Goguryeo looked at Li Xiaotian and said, all living things are equal. You are the same as everyone else. After they die, they cannot be resurrected. You can't either. Even if I have a way, I will not make an exception for you. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows. He went through untold hardships to meet the Dizang of Goguryeo just to ask him about the method of resurrection. Now, he did not care about his feelings at all and directly rejected him. Tang Zheng would not sit by and do nothing. He asked doubtfully, Dizang of Goguryeo, do you have a method of resurrection? Of course, although this is difficult, it is not absolutely impossible. But I will not do so. Dizang of Goguryeo said decisively. He insisted on his beliefs and would not compromise at all. Tang Zhang's head sank and said, for me, can't you make an exception? Dizang of Goguryeo shook his head without hesitation, I deliver all living things from torment, for all living things to be equal. How can I go against my own great wish here? Li Xiaotian was disappointed. She originally thought that after finding the Dizang of Goguryeo, she could be resurrected and be together with Tang Zheng. But her dream was shattered. The corner of her mouth hooked up into a bitter smile. She thought bitterly, forget it, this period of time is already the happiest time of my life. Even if I can't be resurrected, I can often reminisce about it. This is enough. However, Tang Jing did not think so. He had promised Li Xiaotian. Moreover, there was a way, and it was not that there was no way. How could he back down? He finally understood the mystery behind Li Xiaotian's words. People were selfish and had the concept of closeness and distance. It was impossible to treat everyone equally. It was simply impossible to achieve equality for all living things. At this moment, he had a deep understanding. He understood that Dizang of Goguryu's great wish was really a castle in the air, without a solid foundation. In fact, Tang Zhang was a person of great love and righteousness. If he could not do this, others might not be able to do it. The 10 kings of hell saw that the atmosphere between the two sides was becoming more and more delicate, and the differences were getting bigger and bigger. Especially on the matter of resurrecting Li Xiaotian, the differences between the two sides could not be reconciled. At that moment, they all saw hope and looked at Dizang of Goguryo in ridicule. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze as he had already seen through his thoughts. He loudly chanted the name of Buddha, raised his palm, and said in a loud voice, "Tang Zheng, you have already gone astray. The sea of bitterness is boundless, turn back and you will be saved. Otherwise, your life's cultivation and achievements will all be for naught." Tang Zheng was not moved. He said, "I don't think this is a sea of bitterness or a wrong path. I have made up my mind. I must save her. No one can stop all of this." Pausing for a moment, Tang Zheng emphasized each word, "No. No one." The 10 kings of hell almost cheered in excitement. This was Tang Zheng's declaration against the Dizang of Goguryo. To them, it was as pleasant as heavenly music. The corners of the 10 kings of hell's mouth couldn't help but reveal an undetectable smile. Li Xiaotian subconsciously tightened his grip on Tang Zheng's hand. His heart also tensed up as he nervously looked at the Dizang of Goguryo. Pairs of eyes simultaneously locked onto the Dizang of Goguryo. Dizang of Goguryo looked at Tang Zheng with bright eyes. His originally kind eyes became sharper. After pondering for a long time, he said, "Tang Zheng, you should go back. This is not something you can control. If I don't succeed, I will not go back." Tang Zheng said resolutely. "Then you can stay. Anyway, with your 9 yang saint body, you don't need to fear this yin qi." "No." Tang Zheng firmly shook his head. He didn't have time to delay. If Li Xiaotian dragged on for too long and couldn't be revived, then it would be too late for regrets. "Are you so stubborn?" Seeing that Tang Zheng even refused to eat, the Dizang of Goguryo became angry. Back then, when he faced the Shura and the king of the underworld, he used thunderous methods. It could be seen that although he had a merciful heart, he could also become angry. That anger was not something an ordinary person could endure. Tang Zheng obviously understood this point but did not back down in the slightest as he said, "Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, no matter what request you have, as long as you can save her then I will agree to it. You can't help me, so naturally you won't ask for anything." Tang Zheng took a deep breath and asked one last time, "You really won't save her? All life is equal. She will not receive any special treatment." The Dizang of Goguryo insisted. Tang Zheng finally understood that no matter how he earnestly begged, the Dizang of Goguryo would not agree to it. Tang Zheng took a step forward and closed the distance between him and the Dizang of Goguryo. He said in a deep voice, "Dizang of Goguryo, your cultivation is higher than mine, but for her, even if I know I can't win, I still have to make a move. If I win by a fluke or two, I don't know if you will agree to let me revive her." He was directly issuing a challenge. Audacious to the extreme. The 10 kings of hell all had the same thought in their hearts. Although they opposed the Dizang of Goguryo, none of them dared to challenge the Dizang of Goguryo and fight with him. This was because they knew very well that they were not a match for the Dizang of Goguryo. The 10 kings of hell cared about their own reputation and would not fight even if they knew they would lose. Tang Zheng was different. He knew he would lose, but he still fought for a chance to live. Giving up without trying was not his style. He only hoped that the Dizang of Goguryo would agree to this condition. However, the Dizang of Goguryo directly shook his head, "No, no matter if you win or lose, I will not revive her." Tang Jing almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. The Dizang of Goguryeo was so stubborn. He had no choice but to fight and force him to revive Li Shaotian. Then I'll offend you. Tang Jing made his move. The Dizang of Goguryeo chanted the name of Buddha, the sea of bitterness is boundless, repent and the shore is at hand. Chapter 1363. The earth-shattering power swept toward Tang Jing. Tang Jing was like a small boat, bobbing up and down in the storm. Tang Jing knew that he was no match for Dizang of Goguryeo, but he still rushed over without hesitation. With a thought, he used the sky-swallowing technique. A huge black hole suddenly appeared, and the yin qi in the world was sucked into the black hole like rivers flowing into the sea. Hiss! Seeing this, the 10 kings of hell all gasped. It was not difficult for their eyes to recognize the terrifying power of the sky-swallowing technique. They looked at each other. As soon as they attacked, they could see that Tang Jing's strength was really different from last time. He was not inferior to them at all. How can he improve so quickly? The 10 Yama kings were enraged, and they couldn't help but feel a little jealous. They had suffered untold hardships and experienced countless years to reach their current level of cultivation. But Tang Jing was different. At such a young age, he could stand shoulder to shoulder with them. This gave them the illusion that they had lived in vain all these years. Dizang of Goguryeo's eyes were full of splendor. He did not expect Tang Jing to improve so much, but he was not jealous. His cultivation was still much higher than Tang Jing's. With a slap, a golden light appeared in the stormy aura. A Sanskrit word grew bigger and bigger, and finally turned into a huge swastika. The swastika fell from the sky, and the terrifying pressure made Tang Jing breathless. His cheeks instantly turned red. Roar! He roared to the sky and pushed his palms up. The black hole rushed into the sky and met the golden swastika. Black and golden light immediately covered the sky. The golden light was strong and covered the black light. However, the advantage did not last for long. The black light shone and swallowed the golden light. The light of the swastika was greatly reduced. Dizang of Goguryeo frowned and muttered to himself, "Your sky-swallowing technique is really extraordinary. It can actually block my attack." Back then, when fighting against the Lord of the Underworld, Tang Jing had also used the sky-swallowing technique. The Lord of the Underworld's Yama seal had even merged with the sky-swallowing technique. Therefore, Dizang of Goguryeo was no stranger to him. However, this sky-swallowing technique was worlds apart from before. Its might was simply incomparable. "It's really a pity that you're wasting your cultivation in front of me like this. Quickly turn back and you'll be saved," Dizang of Goguryeo advised earnestly. Tang Jing's expression was firm and unwavering. He gritted his teeth and said, "I must save her. I must find a way to save her. I only hope that you will help me this time on account of our past friendship." Dizang of Goguryeo was even more determined than Tang Jing. He was not shaken at all, and there was no room for negotiation. All living beings are equal, there is no exception. Tang Jing's eyes dimmed, but they quickly burned again. He looked at Dizang of Goguryeo in a crazed manner and roared, "Shura!" Roar! With a deafening roar, a figure appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was frightened by the two words Shura. Although not everyone had seen the Shura's might with their own eyes, they all knew how terrifying the Shura was from word of mouth. Seeing the Shura with their own eyes, the 10 kings of hell felt a chill in their hearts. They almost lost their minds as they stared at the figure in a daze. Among them, Song Jiangwang's expression was the worst. He had seen the Shura's might with his own eyes when he rushed to the 18 layers of hell. At that time, Dizang of Goguryeo had only barely suppressed him and won by a narrow margin. Now, how terrifying was the Shura's strength! He did not dare to imagine it, nor could he imagine it. However, the Shura had changed so much that he almost could not recognize him. The Shura used to be a colossus. Now, he was about the same height as an ordinary person. However, the aura he exuded was terrifying. Just as Song Jiangwang expected, once the Shura appeared, the aura of heaven and earth changed. A strong wind rose from the ground and swept in all directions. Ah! The ghosts screamed and flew toward the Shura, as if they were going to be devoured and refined into a part of him. The Shura was born from the condensation of countless ghosts in the 18 layers of hell. These ghosts were like nourishment for him. The moment he appeared, he could not wait to cast a spell, as if he wanted to absorb all the ghosts into his body. This was a subconscious action without any thought at all. Evil creature. A thunderous roar exploded in the clear sky, shaking everyone's ears to the point of buzzing. Dizong of Goguryeo stared at the Shura like lightning. The Shura raised his head proudly. He was no longer the ignorant killing machine from before. When he saw the Dizong of Goguryeo, a hatred from the depths of his soul erupted like a volcano. The Shura's eyes flashed with a dark light, as if there were lightning and thunder. It was terrifying and horrifying. Who are you? The Shura did not recognize the Dizong of Goguryeo. He suppressed his anger and asked. Hearing his clear and normal speech, not only the 10 kings of hell, even the Dizong of Goguryeo was shocked. He pointed at him in disbelief. You! How can you speak? All along, Tang Jing thought that the Dizong of Goguryeo knew the magical effects of the Ksitigarbha Sutra, especially the fact that it could awaken the Shura's intelligence. After all, the Dizong of Goguryeo had told him many times that he must recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra every day to suppress the Shura. From the looks of it, the Dizong of Goguryeo did not know that the Ksitigarbha Sutra had such an effect. It allowed the Shura to bid farewell to the killing machine and become a sentient individual. What's the fuss about my speech? I asked you first, who are you? Why do I want to beat you up whenever I see you? The Shura asked suspiciously. The Dizong of Goguryeo was sure that the Shura had gained intelligence. He looked at Tang Jing and found that he was not surprised. It was obvious that he already knew about this. The key point was, how did the Shura gain intelligence? The Dizong of Goguryeo knew the dangers of the Shura. Once he gained intelligence, it was definitely not a good thing. His expression became serious. I am the Dizong of Goguryeo. The Dizong of Goguryeo said in a deep voice. The Dizong of Goguryeo. Why do I hate you to the bone? The Shura asked in confusion. He did not remember anything about the 18 layers of hell. The Dizong of Goguryeo's heart trembled. Because you are an evil creature. I specifically suppressed you. Of course you would hate me. The Shura was furious. You dare to suppress me. He suddenly realized that he must have been suppressed by him before he gained intelligence. That was why he had such an unforgettable hatred. Evil creature, if I don't suppress you, you will bring disaster to the world. How can I turn a blind eye to it? The Dizong of Goguryeo said in a loud voice. Bring disaster to the world. The Shura looked around and saw the living beings of the ghost realm. His eyes lit up as if he had seen an endless amount of delicious food. Ha ha ha. The Shura burst into laughter. As you wish, I will absorb all of these ghosts for my own use. After he finished speaking, he opened his mouth and took a deep breath. A cold wind blew and the reincarnated ghosts could not stand still and flew towards the Shura. It seemed that in the next second, the ghosts would fall into the Shura's mouth and be refined into a part of him. Stop! Tang Jing saw this and shouted to stop him. The Shura was startled and subconsciously stopped. He looked at Tang Jing with displeasure. You want to stop me too? Tang Jing said without hesitation. Shura, I asked you to come out to deal with him, not these weak ghosts. When the Dizong of Goguryeo heard this, he could not help but look at Tang Jing with approval. The Shura frowned and said sternly, "I will decide my own matters." "How can you decide?" The balance between Tang Jing and the Shura was very fragile. The Shura needed Tang Jing to recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra to increase his intelligence, while Tang Jing needed the Shura to help him fight against strong enemies. Once the Shura's intelligence increased to a certain level, or once Tang Jing's strength increased to a certain level, he would not need the Shura's help. Then, this balance would be broken. Both sides were very clear about this point, but no one pointed it out. After all, they still needed each other at the moment. Tang Jing summoned the Shura because he had no other choice. His strength was not as good as the Dizang of Goguryeo. If he wanted to force the Dizang of Goguryeo to tell him the way to revive Li Shaotian, only the Shura could help him. But the Shura was also very uncontrollable, such as now. Tang Jing's face was ashen. "Then are you going to go back on our original agreement?" The Shura's heart shook. Only now did he remember that he still needed the Tang Jing. If he angered him, it would not be good for him. The Shura coldly snorted and said, "Then let them go for now." As his voice fell, the angry wind calmed down. The ghosts fell to the ground in panic and retreated in panic. Dizang of Goguryeo saw all of this with his eyes. He was very puzzled about the agreement between the two. He wanted to know why the Shura had intelligence. "Tang Jing, you still have a kind heart. You know that these ghosts are innocent," Dizang of Goguryeo said with a complicated expression. It was unknown whether it was praise or sarcasm. Tang Jing had a clear conscience and said, "I just want to know the way to revive her. If you have misgivings about your great wish, you don't need to do it yourself. You just need to tell me the way." "Tang Jing, why are you still so stubborn? Do you think that you can use the Shura to force me to tell you the way?" Dizang of Goguryeo asked back. "This is my only way. I can only try once." Tang Jing was helpless. "Originally, I asked you to suppress the Shura, not to help him." Dizang of Goguryeo raised his voice and said, "You asked me to convert myself. I did as you said and recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra every day. The Ksitigarbha Sutra is indeed miraculous. It dissolved the ruthless aura on his body and at the same time gave him intelligence. It made him no longer a killing machine and had his own consciousness. It was equivalent to obtaining a new life." Tang Jing said the truth. "What?" Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was shocked. Even though his heart was as calm as still water, when he heard the reason behind it, he couldn't help but feel his heart sway, and his face turn pale with shock. All of this was caused by the Ksitigarbha Sutra. It was true that he comprehended the Ksitigarbha Sutra, but the way of heaven contained within was not something that he could completely understand. Only now did he know that the Ksitigarbha Sutra could increase the Shura's intelligence. Could this be the way of heaven's intention? The 10 kings of hell were shocked by this news. They all looked at Dizang of Goguryeo and the Shura. The Shura was actually given all of this by the Ksitigarbha Sutra. This meant that Dizang of Goguryeo was partly responsible for the current situation. King Yanluo rolled his eyes and said, "As everyone knows, the Shura is the public enemy of the ghost realm. The reason why this evil creature became so strong was actually because of Dizang of Goguryeo." King Yanluo's eyes became brighter and brighter. "Dizang of Goguryeo, you keep saying that you are thinking for the ghost realm, but is this really for the ghost realm?" Everyone saw the scene just now clearly. The Shura wants to absorb all the ghosts in the ghost realm. This is equivalent to Dizang of Goguryeo helping the evildoer. Without a doubt, King Yanluo's questioning had ulterior motives and was very destructive. The other kings of hell nodded in agreement. They looked at Dizang of Goguryeo with eyes as sharp as knives. Chapter 1364. Dizang of Goguryeo's eyes changed as he stared at the Shura. Of course, he heard the meaning behind King Yama's words, but he didn't care. He was more interested in the Ksitigarbha Sutra that made the Shura gain intelligence. He pondered for a moment, then suddenly said, "So that's how it is, that's how it is." The others were curious, not knowing what this so-called "so that's how it is" meant. "I really haven't comprehended all the essence of the Ksitigarbha Sutra." "Tangjing, you have unlocked another profound meaning of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. It was not in vain for me to pass on the Ksitigarbha Sutra to you," Dizang of Goguryeo said with emotion. Tangjing frowned and asked in surprise, "Aren't you worried that the Shura has gained intelligence?" Dizang of Goguryeo looked up to the sky and laughed. He chanted the name of Buddha and said, "All things have spirit, all living things are equal." This is one of the profound meanings of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Dizang of Goguryeo has unlocked the Shura's intelligence, which proves this. "I can't be happier, why would I be worried?" Tangjing was stunned. From Dizang of Goguryeo's previous reaction, he thought that he would be angry, but now he was overthinking. He was indeed overthinking. Dizang of Goguryeo's lifelong pursuit was equality, so the Ksitigarbha Sutra he created was also based on this. The Ksitigarbha Sutra unlocking the Shura's intelligence proved this point. It was a recognition of all his hard work, so he was naturally happy. "Do you think the Shura can help you defeat me and then make me tell you the way to resurrect her?" Dizang of Goguryeo asked. Tangjing didn't answer, which was a tacit agreement. Dizang of Goguryeo smiled confidently and said, "Your wishful thinking is wrong. So what if the Shura has intelligence? He is only at the second level of the Mahayana realm, he is no match for me." Dizang of Goguryeo was able to see through the Shura's strength with just a glance, which made Tangjing very surprised. One had to know that in the past, he did not have Shura's strength. However, Dizang of Goguryeo was different. This was enough to prove that Dizang of Goguryeo was much stronger than Shura. There was simply no chance of winning. However, Tangjing did not hesitate because he had no other choice. Shura did not retreat. Shura, who had always won every battle, would not retreat in front of Dizang of Goguryeo. He turned his head and glanced at him, saying, "You want me to defeat him? As you wish." Shwa! The Azura saber suddenly appeared and soared into the air. It hissed as it absorbed the yin chi in the air, turning into a huge black saber that seemed to be about to cut across the sky. Dizang of Goguryeo was interested and nodded seriously, "You are indeed much stronger than before." Dizang of Goguryeo stretched out his hand. The golden light soared into the air, enveloping his hand and then spreading to his whole body. After a while, he was completely bathed in the golden light. The golden light shone, and his appearance was solemn. He put his hands together and saw Shura's big hand pointing. The Azura saber shot through the air, making a piercing sound. Dizang of Goguryeo was not in a hurry. He slowly pushed his hand forward, and the golden light flew from his palm. A golden swastika flew out from her palm, intertwining with the surrounding golden light. In an instant, half of the sky was dyed golden, sweeping away the haze of the ghost realm, giving people a feeling of bathing in the spring breeze. The Azura saber lay across the sky, almost occupying half of the sky. The Azura saber absorbed the yin chi of heaven and earth, and a vortex condensed on the saber, whistling in the wind. Shura waved his big hand downward, and the Azura saber seemed to sense it and slashed downward. Whoosh! The air was torn in half, and the Azura saber slashed down at the swastika from above. At this moment, the world was quiet, and only the sound of the wind and the air being torn apart was heard. Pairs of eyes were focused on the sky. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rushed into everyone's ears. The ghost generals and ghost envoys fell to the ground, bleeding from their 7 orifices, and their eyes dimmed. All the kings of hell also retreated, unwilling to face the aftermath of this attack head-on. Tangjing waved his hands in the air, and a black hole appeared, blocking in front of Li Shaotian. The aftermath of the attack was immediately swallowed by the black hole, and they were not hurt. But his expression was very serious. This level of battle was really terrifying. It was far more fierce than the battle between Shura and Saint King by 1,000 times. The Azura saber shattered, turning into wisps of yin chi. The golden swastika held on for a while, and turned into little golden light, flying toward Shura. It gathered again on top of his head, and kept spinning. The golden light fell, and like a cover, it quickly shrouded Shura. Shura saw this, and he screamed in panic. He kicked his legs, and slammed into the golden light. Clang! The golden light trembled, but it held on. Shura did not break the golden cover, and he used his fists and feet in vain, and kept hitting the golden cover. In the end, he had to give up. Dizang of Goguryeo chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and golden Sanskrit words came out of his mouth, falling on the golden cover. The golden light shone brightly, and like a pocket, it quickly shrank inward, and immediately pressed down on Shura. Shura raised his hands, trying to hold on with his hands, but as the golden Sanskrit words increased, it became harder for him to hold on. The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva originally had a suppressive effect on the ghost realm, and the Azura's evil aura was refined by Tangjing, but the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva purposely used the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to suppress the Azura. Shura still had no room to resist. This scene deeply shocked the 10 kings of hell. They had seen Shura's attack, and they asked themselves, none of them was a match for Shura. Shura had broken through the difficult threshold and reached the Mahayana realm. However, none of the kings of hell had reached the Mahayana realm. King Yanluo and King Songjiang were only at the 9th level of the divine transformation realm, and were still a step away from the Mahayana realm. Even so, Shura was still defeated. He was defeated so thoroughly and so quickly. Even if the 10 kings of hell joined forces, they would definitely not be a match for Dizang of Goguryeo. This gap was not something that could be made up with numbers. Only then did they believe that Dizang of Goguryeo had surpassed them by too much, and left them far behind. They found it hard to suppress their complicated emotions and surging emotions as they looked at Tangjing at the same time. He was the source of all this, so what should he do? Of course, Tangjing would not just watch as Diluo was defeated. The Azura was his trump card. If he lost, then he would really be at his wit's end. I know the Ksitigarbha Sutra too. Tangjing rose into the air and flew above the golden light shield. He put his palms together and kept chanting the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Golden Sanskrit characters flew out of his mouth and flew toward the golden light shield. However, they were all Sanskrit characters, but they were controlled by different people, so they naturally became enemies. It was like different people could use the same technique to attack each other. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was no exception. Boom! 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 The two Sanskrit characters kept attacking each other. Golden light scattered and dyed the surroundings golden. The 10 kings of hell retreated again and again. The power of this battle was terrifying, and they did not want to be affected. They were both the Ksitigarbha Sutra, but one was the creator, and the other was the successor. Unexpectedly, they kept fighting, and it was difficult to determine who was the winner. However, Tangjing knew that all this was an illusion. Once Dizang of Goguryeo really exerted his strength, he would definitely not be a match. But he still did not give up. His golden Sanskrit characters tore a huge crack in the golden light shield. Shura excitedly roared and grew taller. The golden light shield on top of him creaked as if it was about to shatter. Dizang of Goguryeo put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha, saying, Tangjing, you are indeed someone with great comprehension. In such a short time, you have such a deep understanding of the Ksitigarbha Sutra and reached such a level. With a change of topic, his voice became a bit sharper. He widened his eyes and pretended to be an angry Vajra. He said in a deep voice, but, if you want to use Ksitigarbha to fight against me, you are still far from enough. A few golden Sanskrit characters flew out of his mouth and intertwined in the air, forming a huge golden swastika character that fell from the sky. Tang Jing chanted and golden Sanskrit characters flew out of his mouth, but he was unable to turn them into golden Sanskrit characters. Obviously, that could only be done at a higher level. The golden Sanskrit characters flew towards the swastika character, but they shattered upon contact and turned into rays of golden light that scattered around Tang Jing. The swastika character flew above Tang Jing's head and scattered a golden light that turned into a golden light shield, covering both Tang Jing and Shura. Roar! Shura finally tore apart the original golden light shield. Before he could fully extend his tall body, he found another golden light shield covering him and Shura. Light flashed in his hand and the black Shura saber condensed into shape once again. Accompanied by his angry roar, he slashed at the golden light shield. Boom! The golden light shield trembled but did not disintegrate. Instead, the Shura saber's light gradually dimmed. Tang Jing's golden Sanskrit characters hit the golden light shield but had no effect. However, he did not stop because stopping meant failure. Li Xiaotian's eyes were red. Tang Jing had sacrificed too much for her. He fought so desperately just to revive her. How could she not be moved by this? The golden light shield shrunk and compressed the space between Shura and Tang Jing. The two of them were in a difficult situation but could not break out. The golden light shield closed in on them. Boom! Boom! The two of them fell to the ground and were pressed down hard. They could not get up at all. They were already unable to move, and the only thing that could be heard was the sound of their heavy breathing, which sounded like bellows. Dizong of Goguryeo flew down and landed beside them. He looked down at them and read their thoughts from their unyielding eyes. Are you still not convinced? Tang Jing gritted his teeth and endured the pressure. He used all his strength and said, if you don't revive Li Xiaotian, I will not give in. I will not regret it even if I die. Stubborn. Dizong of Goguryeo shook his head and sighed. Tang Jing was indeed stubborn. If he did not achieve his goal, he would not compromise. Dizong of Goguryeo looked at him again. The light of wisdom in his eyes was different from before. He could not help but feel gratified. You have developed spiritual wisdom. You should distinguish good from evil and repent. This is true wisdom. You are stubborn. You don't know that the sea of bitterness is boundless. Repent and you will be saved. You are too obsessed. Not good, not good. Dizong of Goguryeo sighed and stretched out his hand. The swastika flew from his palm to Tang Jing. Chapter 1365. The swastika pierced through the golden barrier and landed on top of Tang Jing's head. Boom! With a loud sound, it was as if the sky had collapsed, ruthlessly pressing down on Tang Jing's body. He was completely sprawled on the ground, not even having the strength to gasp for breath. Ah, no! Li Xiaotian screamed involuntarily. She jumped in front of the golden barrier, feeling as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She reached out with both hands, trying to break through the golden barrier, but she was sent flying by a huge force, falling to the ground in a sorry state. She was already a wisp of a living soul. She no longer had the strength she had when she was alive, so she had no way of resisting this force. No! Seeing this, Tang Jing screamed at the top of his lungs. Dizong of Goguryeo, don't hurt her. Dizong of Goguryeo floated in midair, golden light flickering. He glanced at Li Xiaotian and said, of course I won't hurt her. Miss, all life is equal, but you don't agree. Do you still insist on this view? Li Xiaotian staggered up, looking up at Dizong of Goguryeo without the slightest fear. She said sternly, yes. All life cannot be absolutely equal. Dizong of Goguryeo sighed and shook his head, saying, silly child, you are the same as him. Pausing for a moment, Dizang of Goguryeo said to Tangjing, "Your obsession is too deep. If you don't concentrate on comprehending the Ksitigarbha Sutra, your obsession will increase day by day, and it will only harm your cultivation. I passed on the Ksitigarbha Sutra to you, so of course I won't let you fall into this path." Tang Zhang's heart moved. He asked, "What do you want to do?" Dizang of Goguryeo stared deeply at Tang Jing, neither sad nor happy. He said solemnly, "I want you to concentrate on comprehending the Ksitigarbha Sutra. When you suddenly wake up, it will be the time for you to leave the sea of bitterness." Finished speaking, he flipped his palm. The swastika above Tang Zhang's head erupted with golden light, rumbling like thunder. Crack! The ground cracked open, revealing a bottomless pit. Before Tang Jing could react, his body rapidly fell down. He tried to circulate his power to counteract the force of the fall, but to no avail. The ground healed bit by bit, and soon, it was completely sealed, as if everything that had happened just now was just an illusion. If not for the fact that Tang Jing had indeed disappeared, everyone would have thought that they had seen wrongly. Tang Zhang! Li Xiaotian screamed at the top of his lungs and pounced over, only to find that he missed. The golden barrier disappeared. Only Shura was left lying on the ground with difficulty. He stared at Dizang of Goguryeo fearfully. Li Xiaotian kept slapping the ground as if he wanted the crack to reappear, but it was all in vain. His voice was hoarse from crying, but he still couldn't get Tangjing to come back. She suddenly turned her head and rushed to Dizang of Goguryeo, begging, "Dizang of Goguryeo, I beg you, let him come back. I beg you, I will agree to any conditions. I don't want to be resurrected, I want to stay in the world of spirits and souls." All of this happened because of her, so one could imagine the self-blame and shame in her heart. Dizang of Goguryeo looked at her lightly. He went to the sea of suffering. If he can understand the true meaning of the Ksitigarbha Sutra, he can naturally leave the sea of suffering and return to your side. As for your resurrection, you can't be resurrected. No, I won't be resurrected. I beg you to let him return to the human world. He still has too many things to do, and many people need his protection. The human world was full of changes. If Tang Zhang was gone for too long, she really couldn't predict what would happen. Therefore, she had to think of a way to let Tang Jing return to the human world. Dizang of Goguryeo didn't waver at all, saying, "This matter has been decided, there is no room for maneuver. If he wants to return to the human world as soon as possible, then the only way is to leave the sea of suffering as soon as possible. This is the right way." Seeing that he wouldn't budge no matter what, Li Xiaotian despaired and sat on the ground dispiritedly. She had never felt so helpless before. When the other kings of hell saw this scene, they were deeply shocked. They had always thought that Tang Zhang and Dizang of Goguryeo had a close relationship. They never expected that Dizang of Goguryeo would use a thunderous method to trap Tang Zhang. What was that huge crack just now? They didn't understand at all. Hearing Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's words, he was trapped in the sea of bitterness, but what kind of place was the sea of bitterness? They had never heard of it. They once again deeply felt the gap between them and Dizang of Goguryeo. They had originally planned to jump and resist, but at this moment, they all wanted to retreat in their hearts. They looked at each other with ugly expressions. No one wanted to rush out and end up in the same state as Tang Jing. The Shura lay on the ground with a golden shield on his head, unable to move. His gaze towards Dizang of Goguryeo was gradually filled with respect. The Shura didn't have his past memories and didn't know about the feud with Dizang of Goguryeo. However, he still regarded Dizang of Goguryeo as an enemy. Dizang of Goguryeo also looked at the Shura and said thoughtfully, "Shura, you originally didn't have intelligence, but the Ksitigarbha Sutra gave you intelligence. This is your opportunity. You are fated with the Ksitigarbha Sutra." Roar! The Shura wasn't interested in these words at all and roared hysterically. Dizang of Goguryeo saw this and shook his head slightly. Your intelligence hasn't been fully awakened. You still can't understand the wonders of this opportunity. I don't blame you. During this period of time, I will properly convert you and get rid of the last bit of hostility in your body. That will be the time when you will truly be reborn. Dezong of Goguryeo wanted to convert the Shura. This was not an easy task. Back then, he didn't succeed. Now, he had a sudden impulse. This wasn't difficult to understand. Back then, the Shura was a killing machine without intelligence. It wasn't easy to convert him. After all, converting a machine was like playing the lute to a cow. Now, it was different. The Shura had intelligence. This could be converted. After all, with intelligence, he could think and receive information. I don't want you to convert me. I'm fine. The Shura roared and kept struggling. Stubborn and stubborn. Dezong of Goguryeo shook his head and sighed. But I won't let go of any target of conversion. This is to save you, and also to save the common people. The Shura naturally didn't agree. He used all his tricks and tried to escape from Dezong of Goguryeo's hands. But it was to no avail. Dezong of Goguryeo no longer paid attention to the Shura. Instead, he turned his attention to the 10 kings of hell. When the 10 kings of hell saw his gaze turn to them, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Each and every one of their expressions became extremely unnatural. King Nianluo felt as if there was a blade on his back. He said resentfully, Dezong of Goguryeo, don't misunderstand. This time, it's all because of Tang Zheng. If he didn't try so hard to get us to find you, we wouldn't have come here. Yes, yes. All of this is because of Tang Zheng. The other kings of hell nodded in agreement. Song Jiangwang, however, didn't say anything and remained silent. Dezong of Goguryeo looked at him curiously and asked, Song Jiangwang, don't you have anything to say? Song Jiangwang raised his head and met Dezong of Goguryeo's gaze. Although Dezong of Goguryeo's gaze was as calm and clear as a lake, it seemed to be able to see through his heart. It was as if he was standing naked in front of him without any secrets. It's true that all of this was Tang Zheng's idea. He only wanted to save people. However, everyone is still dissatisfied with your matter of saving all living beings. There's no doubt about this. Song Jiangwang took a deep breath and said in an earth-shattering manner. What? The other kings of hell turned pale with fright. Song Jiangwang, are you kidding me? If you want to die, why do you want to drag the other kings of hell down with you? This is too unkind. Dezong of Goguryeo looked at him with interest and said, do you have any objections to my actions? Song Jiangwang mustered all the courage in his body. He had never felt so conflicted and nervous before, but he still insisted on his answer. Yes, what this young lady said makes a lot of sense. The wish of equality for all living beings may seem beautiful, but in reality, it's like a castle in the air. Its foundation is unstable. Song Jiangwang said firmly. Dezong of Goguryeo glanced at the dazed Li Xiaotian and his expression changed. Song Jiangwang, I didn't expect you to be the same as them. You're so shallow and stubborn. Song Jiangwang shook his head, I don't think so. Normally, I would seek out advantages and avoid disadvantages. But this time, I don't know why, but when I saw this young lady disregard her own safety and speak her truest thoughts, I was deeply shocked. Dezong of Goguryeo raised his eyebrows in surprise. He obviously knew that Dezong of Goguryeo had always sought out advantages and avoided disadvantages. Now that the situation was clear, he actually spoke up for Li Xiaotian and opposed him. This was not a wise thing to do. The other kings of hell also looked at Song Jiangwang. They felt that he had really gone crazy to say such words. Two pairs of eyes stared at each other. An invisible pressure spread out from where their eyes met, making it hard for them to breathe. Good, very good. After a long time, Dizong of Goguryeo clapped his hands and praised, "In the ghost realm, there will always be a king of hell who is good at speaking out for justice and speaking from his heart." What? Dizong of Goguryeo actually praised Song Jiangwang. Was there a mistake? He was the exact opposite of Dizong of Goguryeo, and he actually liked him. Wasn't this masochistic? Dizong of Goguryeo's foresight was not something they could guess. He did not care about their shocked gazes. He pointed at Song Jiangwang, then at Li Xiaotian who was lying on the ground, and said, "If you don't believe me, then I will use my actions to prove it. From now on, the two of you will stay by my side and bear witness to everything. I will let you know that you are wrong, very wrong." Song Jiangwang's expression was calm, but his heart suddenly jumped. He seemed to be supporting Li Xiaotian and opposing Dizong of Goguryeo. His integrity was commendable. In reality, this was a strategy he had come up with after careful consideration. It was not an action he made on a whim. Song Jiangwang's wisdom and resourcefulness were not for show. When Tang Jing disappeared into the crack, his mind was spinning rapidly, thinking of the most advantageous strategy for himself. He was certain that after this incident, Dizong of Goguryeo's patience with the 10 kings of hell would no longer exist. He would promote his beliefs with great fanfare, and would not make a small fuss. This was a showdown with the kings of hell. Anyone who dared to obstruct him would not have a good ending. The position of the 10 kings of hell was in jeopardy. Song Jiangwang had to think of a countermeasure as soon as possible. He indeed lived up to his name and came up with a countermeasure, which was to support Li Xiaotian. This way, he would be able to separate himself from the other kings of hell's camp. This was a risky move. Song Jiangwang was gambling. If he gambled right, then he would succeed. If he gambled wrong, then he would be like the other kings of hell. There would be no worse outcome. Without a doubt, Song Jiangwang gambled right. Dizong of Goguryeo allowed him and Li Xiaotian to bear witness to everything. This meant that Song Jiangwang had successfully separated himself from the other kings of hell's camp. What would happen to the other kings of hell? Nothing good. Chapter 1366. Song Jiangwang won the bet. The other kings of hell finally came back to their senses and shouted at him for being treacherous, glaring fiercely at Song Jiangwang. Originally, they were still silently cursing Song Jiangwang for courting death and secretly rejoicing in their hearts. Now it seemed that they were too short-sighted and didn't see that Song Jiangwang was retreating in order to gain the upper hand. Dizong of Goguryeo didn't care about their little thoughts. His gaze was cold, and like a bolt of lightning, it fell on the 9th king of hell. "In the past, I was worried about the stability of the ghost realm, so I didn't do anything to you. Now it seems that I was too kind." Dizong of Goguryeo's words made the 9th king of hell turn pale with fright. He asked in shock, "What are you going to do?" "Of course it's to promote my ideas and achieve the ultimate state of equality," Dizong of Goguryeo said in a deep voice, not giving them a chance to question or refute. "No." Although he was afraid of Dizong of Goguryeo's strength, King Yanluo was the first to stand up and oppose. The other kings of hell also cowered in agreement. They had vested interests, so how could they watch Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva destroy everything they had? "I have made up my mind, no one can stop me," Dizong of Goguryeo said firmly. The kings of hell immediately fell silent and looked at each other. They didn't expect Dizong of Goguryeo to change his original style and become so unyielding. They regretted it. If they didn't follow Tang Jing, things wouldn't have turned out like this. At least, the status quo could be maintained for a short period of time. What to do, what to do? The kings of hell were at a loss, and their expressions were extremely ugly. Although Song Jiangwang was also very pained, after all, his interests would also be damaged, but he had one thing that the other kings of hell couldn't compare to. He was better at observing the situation and knew that this was the general trend and couldn't be stopped. He might as well give up everything he had now. Who said that he wouldn't have more in the future? As for Dizang of Goguryu's statement that all living beings were equal, he scoffed and did not believe it at all. Once the Dizang of Goguryo wanted to promote his ideas, he needed some people to implement them. This was the best opportunity for him to gain power again and create a new social class. He had to seize this opportunity. His future achievements would definitely surpass his current achievements, and all of the other Yama kings would be swept into the dust of history. None of the other Yama kings had considered this possibility at all. All of them were focused on the benefits that they could reap, and they were firmly protecting Qinyi, not wanting to be harmed in the slightest. Only by giving up could one gain something. They didn't know this at all. Dizang of Goguryo did not give them a chance to hesitate. He said, "I know what you are thinking. You must be thinking of ways to stop me. So much so that you would not hesitate to destabilize the world of spirits and souls so that I would not dare to act rashly." The Yama kings were stunned. Their astonished eyes betrayed their true thoughts. Dizang of Goguryo saw through their thoughts and spoke their true thoughts. Dizang of Goguryo looked at them, and it was as he had guessed. With a swoosh, his solemn face became a little more fierce. "I will never tolerate you doing this. The world of spirits and souls must not be in chaos." Dizang of Goguryo said firmly. Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva's gaze swept across the faces of the Yama kings one by one before changing the topic and saying, "Tang Zheng's obsession is too deep and he does not know how to repent, but he has also done a good deed for me." What was it? Everyone's interest was piqued. Dizang of Goguryo pointed at the Yama kings and said, "He gathered all of you together, so that you can't escape." "What do you mean?" The Yama kings' hearts skipped a beat. They had an ominous premonition. Dizang of Goguryo slowly flew towards the Yama kings. He looked down at them and said, "You have bad intentions. You have enslaved the world of spirits and souls for so many years. Who knows how many lives you have killed? Now you are thinking of ways to stop me. If I leave you alive, the world of spirits and souls will continue to fall." Although these words were short, they were filled with endless murderous intent. The Yama kings' hearts sank. Their faces became extremely ugly. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Song Jiangwang still had a lingering fear in his heart. He had almost ended up in the same situation as them. He really had too much foresight. He gazed deeply at Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva and thought to himself, "I am no longer the Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva of the past. I can fool him with a few words." Back then, Dizang of Goguryo swore that he would not become a Buddha until hell was empty. This was Song Jiangwang's scheme. Now, using this trick to deal with him would not work at all. The Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva's entire body glowed with a golden light. The solemn expression on his face faded, and he became incomparably fierce. Wherever his gaze passed, it was as if there was a powerful blade on his body, causing people to tremble in fear. The Yama kings knew that something was wrong. They immediately turned around. As long as they left the eye of reincarnation and returned to their own territory. Dizang of Goguryo wanted to deal with them, but he had to think twice. They had enough strength to disturb the peace of the world of spirits and souls. They cast spells one after another, trying to return to their own territory from the teleportation array. However, when they cast spells, the teleportation array did not even have the slightest fluctuation of mana. What's going on? They were shocked and looked at the teleportation array in disbelief. The next moment, they suddenly realized. They turned to look at Dizang of Goguryo and said in horror, You did something. How simple is it to restrict the teleportation array?" Dizang of Goguryo said casually. They immediately understood that the Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva had already made up his mind. They were like fish in a net, how could they escape? "What should we do?" They looked at each other. "He doesn't want us to live. Then let's fight." The Yama Kings gritted their teeth and said fiercely, "Fight!" The Yama Kings had always been at the top of the pyramid of the world of spirits and souls. Ever since Dizang of Goguryeo appeared, they had been trembling with fear. They could fall off the high platform at any time. They had had enough of this kind of life. They had long wanted to resist, but their hearts were not united. No one stood up, so naturally, they could not resist. It was different this time. Dizang of Goguryeo had already forced them to their doorstep and put a knife to their necks. If they did not resist, only death would await them. They had always been the ones to decide the fate of others. When had their own fate been controlled by others? Thus, they reached a tacit understanding in an instant. Even if the hope was slim, they had to fight. Otherwise, what was the difference between being robbed and dying? They really could not accept that a person who had always been in awe of them would be on equal footing with them in the future. This was even more uncomfortable than killing them. Dizang of Goguryeo shook his head and said sternly, stubborn and unrepentant. He chanted the name of Buddha. He put his palms together and separated them again. A golden light flew out from between his palms. Whoosh! The golden light shot towards the 9 Yama Kings. The Yama Kings shouted one after another. Light suddenly appeared in their hands. 9 Yama King seals flew into the air and fiercely smashed towards the golden light. With a rumble, the earth seemed to tremble. The golden light dissipated. The Yama Kings secretly cheered. Their confidence swelled. The combined strength of the 9 of them was not as weak as they thought. This attack was very sharp. They looked at each other and activated the Yama King's seals. Immediately, the Yama King's seals expanded and turned into 9 mountains. They pressed down on Dizang of Goguryeo. Dizang of Goguryeo's expression did not change. He chanted the Kitagarbha Sutra. Lines of golden Sanskrit words flowed out of his mouth and intertwined to form a huge swastika. This swastika was like a huge net flying towards the sky, as if it wanted to wrap around the 9 mountains. However, the difference in size between the two sides was too great. The swastika seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow. But no one thought so. After all, they had just seen the power of the swastika. The Asura was still pressed to the ground and could not turn around. Boom! Another loud sound. Golden light overflowed, and the black light of Yama King's seals spread in all directions. Both sides seemed to be evenly matched in this attack. But the Yama Kings did not stop. They activated their powers. The Yama King's seals shone brightly and turned into a huge whirlpool. It was pitch black, as if it wanted to swallow everything. The Yama King's seals were the most powerful treasures of the Yama Kings. Not only did it turn into a mountain, it could also absorb souls. It was a powerful weapon for absorbing souls. The Yama King's seals turned into a whirlpool. The sky changed color, and the wind howled. Whirlpools appeared out of thin air. Ah! Those ghosts who were waiting to be reincarnated screamed. They did not have any powers. How could they resist the Yama King's seals that were like their nemesis? Not only the ghosts, even the ghost generals and ghost messengers stationed here could not escape the same fate. They screamed and flew into the sky. The Yama Kings did not stop. The Yama King's seals were aimed at Dizang of Goguryeo, trying to suck his soul into it. The Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's face suddenly darkened, and his anger gradually became apparent. He said, "You dare to disregard the souls of the innocent. What qualifications do you have to be the master of a region and command millions of lives?" The Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's hand gestures changed. He formed a mudra with both hands. Boundless golden light was born from the mudra. Like the sun, it shot in all directions. Immediately, it illuminated this part of the gloomy sky. The golden light was too bright. It enveloped Dizang of Goguryeo completely. Suddenly, an even more intense golden light penetrated through. It overshadowed the original golden light. Everyone looked at it. The Kasaya on Dizong of Goguryeo flew up. It slowly rose into the sky. The golden light was dazzling. Dizong of Goguryeo pointed his finger. The Kasaya flew toward the Yama King's gate. Dizong of Goguryo's voice was like a huge bell. It rumbled, scarier than thunder. Vajra's glare, endless Kasaya, kill. Dizong of Goguryo's eyes widened in anger. He floated in the air without moving. However, the Kasaya moved. This Kasaya was called the Endless Kasaya. It was endless and boundless. Before the Yama Kings could understand what was going on, the Kasaya flew above their heads. It even covered the whirlpool created by the Yama King's seal. The Kasaya did not look big. However, when it was spread out, it was really endless. It covered a large part of the sky above their heads. The whirlpool of the Yama King's seal was like a small dot in front of the Kasaya. What kind of treasure is this? They looked at each other in dismay, their hearts beating like drums. It was because the magical force transmitted from this endless monastic robe was too shocking. What are you afraid of? We have so many people. Let's fight. Seeing that the morale of the army was in chaos, the Yama Kings could not bear to look at it. They quickly tried to boost their morale. These words were very effective. The Yama Kings came to their senses. This was a battle with their backs to the river. They could only fight and not retreat. Kill. Chapter 1367. The King of Hell went all out and unleashed the greatest power of the King of Hell's seal. The infinite cassock was a sage artifact. It covered the sky and the earth with dazzling golden light. It did not give the King of Hell's seal a chance to unleash its power. The 9 vortexes seemed to be sucking the sky into them. Its power was terrifying. The infinite cassock's golden light was no less powerful than the vortexes. It completely enveloped the vortexes and descended. Boom! A tornado formed in the middle of the vortexes. Then, tornadoes flew out from the other vortexes. The sky was completely occupied by the 9 tornadoes, covering the sky and the sun. Those ghosts were like duckweed, flying towards the terrifying tornadoes. Once they were sucked in, their souls would be destroyed. Thus, deafening screams resounded through the sky, making one's hair stand on end. Dizong of Goguryo's eyes were wide open with anger. He chanted and his hand seals changed constantly. The infinite cassock was not afraid of the 9 tornadoes at all. Boom! Finally, a tornado struck the infinite monastic robe. The monastic robe fluttered and swayed, but it immediately stabilized. Golden light sprinkled down, and the black tornadoes were immediately dyed golden. The screams of the ghosts that were attracted stopped abruptly. Their eyes became extremely calm. Although the King of Hell's seal was still unleashing its power, it seemed that in their eyes, the King of Hell's seal was not scary at all. The tornadoes were completely dyed golden by the golden light. They shone brightly, and the speed of the tornadoes decreased sharply. Crack! With a crisp sound, cracks appeared on the tornadoes. They spread rapidly and soon covered the entire tornadoes. In the end, the tornado exploded with a loud bang, turning into specks of golden light that drifted in the air. The ghosts that were attracted to the King of Hell's seal were freed and cheered. The tornadoes were connected to the King of Hell's seal. When the tornadoes shattered, the terrifying power spread directly to the King of Hell's seal. Crack! The heaven-grade King of Hell's seal flashed and a crack appeared on it. Finally, in the dazzling light, the King of Hell's seal broke into 2 and was completely destroyed. Pfft! A King of Hell spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression immediately became dispirited. It was obvious that he had been severely injured. Upon seeing this, the other Yama kings roared as they frantically activated their Yama seals in an attempt to save Chinye's life. However, rays of golden light fell from the infinite monastic robe. In an instant, the world was completely occupied by the golden light, especially the 8 golden pillars of light that descended from the sky. The energy they contained was awe-inspiring. The 8 golden lights and the 8 tornadoes attacked each other, and the tornadoes were completely dyed gold in a short while. With the previous example, the kings of hell immediately understood that they were no match for Dezong of Goguryeo. Their confidence just now was just self-deception. What should we do? The Yama kings glanced at one another, unable to come up with a suitable answer. No one said anything because they had already realized that this was a matter of life and death. Before they could make up their minds, Dezong of Goguryeo had already made up his mind. He chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and the endless cassock shone with golden light. The 8 tornadoes were completely dyed golden and exploded. The tornadoes disappeared, and the 8 Yama seals were destroyed along with them. The heaven-grade treasures, the most precious treasures of the kings of hell, were defeated in less than 10 minutes by the infinite monastic robe. Furthermore, those treasures were completely removed from the stage. Puff, 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 the kings of hell vomited blood one after another, as if they were about to vomit out their internal organs. Their faces were as pale as paper as they looked at the infinite monastic robe in the sky in disbelief. The infinite monastic robe was slowly descending. Without the resistance of the Yama seals, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. One could imagine how they felt. Song Jiangwang was completely shocked by this scene. He was subdued by Dezong of Goguryeo's cultivation. He had a lingering fear, and his back was drenched in cold sweat. If he had stubbornly persisted, or if he had not won the bet, would he have suffered the same fate as these kings of hell? There were no ifs in everything. He had almost walked through the gates of hell and his soul had almost been destroyed. Song Jiangwang's mouth trembled a few times. He looked at Dezong of Goguryeo with more and more fear in his eyes. One by one, the kings of hell vomited blood, and their auras became very weak. Looking at the infinite monastic robe descending from the sky, they felt as if there was a knife hanging over their necks that could fall and take their lives at any time. They could not care less about their injuries. Without the Yama seals, they still had a lot of abilities. Although they were not as powerful as the Yama seals, their power was still not to be underestimated. Thus, the 9 kings of hell formed seals and cast spells. A terrifying gloomy aura spread out from their bodies. Not long after, these auras merged together and turned into a huge ferocious ghost head. This ghost head seemed to occupy half the sky. It was several times larger than the mountain that the Yama seals had turned into. At a glance, it felt very small. The infinite monastic robe bloomed with golden light. Its aura did not diminish as it quickly descended. Roar! The ghost head roared at the sky. Yin energy surged as if it was going to devour everything in the world. Dezong of Goguryeo's expression did not change. He did not take this terrifying scene seriously at all. He chanted, and the mysterious Ksitigarbha Sutra spurted out from his mouth. It turned into golden Sanskrit words and flew onto the infinite monastic robe. Immediately, the infinite monastic robe shone brightly. Its speed of descent increased greatly, and it collided head-on with the ghost head. The infinite monastic robe shrank inwards and immediately wrapped around the ghost head. The sinister and terrifying Yin energy was immediately covered by the golden light. Bang bang bang. The ghost head was struggling in the monastic robe. It kept crashing and trying to break out. However, all of its efforts were in vain. The infinite monastic robe's golden light was too dazzling. It was not something that the ghost head could break through. When the kings of hell saw this, their hearts immediately fell into a bottomless abyss. Their weak auras became hurried, and they panted like a cow. Kill! Suddenly, one of the kings of hell shouted and rushed toward the infinite monastic robe without caring about his own safety. Bang! A ray of golden light shot out from the infinite monastic robe and hit the king of hell. A huge black hole appeared in the king of hell's chest, and he flew out like a cannonball. While he was still in midair, his eyes were staring at his chest in disbelief. There were bits and pieces of golden light in the black hole. The golden light spread in all directions. Soon, the king of hell's body was completely covered by the golden light, and he turned into a golden man. Crack! A crack spread from the inside out to the outside of his body. Soon, the cracks covered his entire body. In the end, he shattered into pieces of golden light and scattered in all directions. The other kings of hell looked as if they were struck by lightning. They looked at this scene in a daze, as if they did not expect their comrade to be so weak. The kings of hell were fighting with their backs to the wall. The pressure they were under was already extremely great. This scene was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Fear quickly spread in their hearts. He really dares to kill us. This thought appeared in the kings of hell's mind. If they still had a trace of hope before, this scene clearly told them that Dizang of Goguryeo really wanted to kill them.